This is a Nintendo Switch, a nondescript rectangle with a screen on it and the worst stand ever built into a portable device. It struggles to run third-party games in 1080p docked and 720p undocked, even though it was released 3.5 years after the PS4 and Xbox One, who were already making the move to 4K. It sold tens of millions more than those consoles and their successors over its 8-year lifespan. Not to mention, it saved Nintendo from certain doom. Welcome to a review and retrospective of the Nintendo Switch. In this video, we're going to take a walk through each year of the Nintendo Switch's life, up to the release of the Nintendo Switch 2. We're going to look back at nearly every single first-party game they released for the console with fresh eyes, thinking back to how we felt about the games when they first came out, and how we feel about them now that some time has passed, as well as a bit of a look to the future, what each of these franchises might have in store for us on the new system, and maybe some random other Nintendo moments that happened throughout the lifespan. Now, I didn't play every single first-party release for the system, but I'll still briefly go over their lasting effects on the overall Nintendo fandom, at least from what I've observed. So let's start at January 2017, when after a long wait, the full reveal of the console was presented to us for the first time. 2 controllers in one box, like the NES. Portable, like the Game Boy. X and Y buttons, like the SNES. Analog control sticks and rumble, like the N64. A handle, like the GameCube. A touchscreen, like the DS. Motion controls, like the Wii. And playing games off the TV, like the Wii U, which is completely different than portability. This was how Nintendo sold the product to us. It was a console that inherited all of their entertainment DNA from the past, except the Virtual Boy, and packed it into one sleek, new, modern next generation. The 2017 Nintendo Switch presentation was seen as a major turning point for the company after years of the sauceless Wii U generation. A console that had terrible marketing, no momentum, and was based around an extremely niche gimmick. I really enjoyed my Wii U for the few games it had, but everyone, including myself, was waiting with bated breath about what they were going to do next. How were they going to dig themselves out of this hole? What is Project NX? They laid it out all here. It's a hybrid console that lets you play games on the TV like normal, then lets you take it out of the dock to instantly continue playing on the portable screen. It was kind of genius. But how do you make it work if portable consoles have to have all the buttons and stuff built into them? You make detachable controllers, pop them out to play on the TV, slide them into this little plastic thing to make it feel like it's almost a full controller. What about wrist straps to avoid those TV-shattering Wii Sports bowling incidents? Make those detachable too. Just slide on that thing and boom, you got yourself a wrist strap. Everything we were seeing was so refreshing, new, and exciting, because it wasn't just wrapping up the dark years of the Wii U where everything was going wrong. Even before that, hardcore fans were beyond sick of Nintendo's brand identity since the extremely successful original Wii era. Once they miraculously hooked a mainstream audience and created a console that was thoroughly enjoyed by consumers of all ages, they leaned into that hard for nearly a decade. Both the Wii and the Wii U had some incredible games, but the company itself got so cocky. All the marketing felt like it was made for 5-year-olds or their moms, and many franchises were going in directions no one was happy about if they weren't being outright ignored. And then when the Wii U bombed, it wasn't the moms or the little kids who stuck around, it was the fans. Nintendo had something to prove to those fans on this day. The presentation directly targeted the people who were waiting for them to bring back their A game. We had a generation of waiting for just one new 3D Zelda. No word on a traditional 3D Mario. 5 new Super Mario Broses that all blend together. Metroid was just nowhere to be found except for Federation Force. Mario Party fundamentally changed its gameplay style into something nobody liked. We didn't even get a real WarioWare. We didn't get a home console Animal Crossing, but we did get Amiibo Festival. The only home console Kirby game we got was a Canvas Curse sequel gimmick game. Paper Mario was dead in the eyes of the fans. Mario and Luigi was actually dead. And even Smash Bros. Gave us a new game with barely any single player and was overall a nerfed version of itself due to the insistence of keeping the gameplay consistent with the 3DS version that no one played. But I don't want to make it seem worse than it was. All that stuff is true, but there were some highlights in the Wii U era. Nintendo Land, in my opinion, by far their greatest pack-in launch title ever. It remained the multiplayer game of choice throughout the whole generation, though that's partially because of the other party games kind of dropping the ball. There still was no other game that used the gamepad gimmick as effectively as Nintendo Land. And it wasn't just mini-games and tech demos, there was some fun and challenging single-player content as well. As much as I dunked on them for ignoring franchises, they did give us Pikmin 3. I was so happy to get another Pikmin game. Not my favorite one, but it was great. And I made fun of Smash Bros too, but I played that game more than any other Smash game, including Ultimate. And bringing it to college was practically the reason I made my friends there. Even though we were begging for a traditional 3D Mario, no one can deny that Super Mario 3D World is a fantastic game. Mario Kart 8 obviously changed lives and ironically became one of the biggest reasons the Switch sold so well. Super Mario Maker is like every Nintendo fan's dream, and let's not forget Splatoon. It's so rare to see Nintendo plant a flag and attempt to start a major franchise like that. It was a really fun twist on a competitive shooter, and it was a smash hit even on a dying console. But that was kind of it for the Wii U. That's all we had for 5 years. Our eyes were peeled to the 2017 presentation as Nintendo tried to tell us, we're so back. Wow, that looks not as good as Nintendo Land, but I'm sure it'll be a fun pack-in title. Then they showed ARMS. Fighting game about arms. Okay, cool. Splatoon 2, there's a real game. Big sequel to Splatoon, that's great. Then they showed a new 3D Mario with collectibles and weird and wacky worlds. Oh my god, I'm gonna cry. It's Mario Odyssey. Then Xenoblade 2, that's huge. Is that gonna be like a whole franchise now? And then they show Fire Emblem Warriors. Okay. And then they go into the third-party support that's coming down the line. It's gonna be a lot better than the Wii U. We're getting Dragon Quest stuff, Shin Megami Tensei, introducing Project Octopath Traveler, whatever that is. Sega is gonna do something, probably. Yeah, we got Todd Howard. Yeah, we got Suda51, even the guy from EA. He named his kid after Luigi, cause he loves us so much.
For as long as I've played games, I've been a massive fan of the Nintendo platform's an amazing culture of creativity. So much so that when my firstborn son was born, my wife and I gave him the middle name Luigi.
And that's why we're putting FIFA on Switch. But we're not forgetting the main event. Reggie comes in for the finishing blow. That Zelda you've been waiting for, it's coming. Day 1.
Save her, my daughter.
Open your eyes.
My god, it's Snipper Clips! Skylanders, everyone's playing it. Everybody is playing that. It's gonna be great. Wait, we can just dance? What is he looking at? He's looking at Splatoon 2. Battle mode. He's gonna die. He's gonna die. Uh-oh. Rip. Is that the end of the demo? Don't die, ever. Oh, he just switched. He just switched. It happened. We are next. We are next in line for the future. Guys, excited? Yes. Thoughts on Breath of the Wild?
Oh, it was good, but I died too much.
Me too. The show's almost over, but we peeked in the door. We got pizza.
No! Stop it! Let's just end it here.
Oh my god.
You got the Joe's face. Yeah, I'm doing. 3, 2, I'm on.
Ah, he screwed up.
Try not to hunch your back.
This is a great photo I got right here.
March 3rd, 2017. It was a fun day. I lucked out and only had a few hours of classes, so I got to go pick up my Switch and all the other stuff and bring it home to an empty apartment. I just threw everything out on the floor and started opening it all, as one by one, friends would knock on the door once they heard I was back and they came in to check it all out. We took turns playing Breath of the Wild, snipper clips, and even 1-2 Switch. We played around with it until it was time to go see that movie, Logan, which also came out on the same day. Of course I brought the Switch with me in the special edition Sheikah Slate carrying case. We picked up another friend on the way who I surprised with the console and just let her play Zelda for the car ride to the theater. I remember us all saying multiple times, "I can't believe we're playing the biggest Zelda game ever made and it's portable." It was blowing all of our minds. After 8 years, it's something we take for granted, but at the time, it was huge. Now, after that night, most of them still didn't plan to get a Switch for themselves, but that would eventually change when a certain game came out we'll get to later. The rest was history. Nintendo's Switch was a tremendous success. Nintendo was so back. They made 1 billion games for the thing, and I'm about to review all the ones I played, but first, we gotta review the hardware itself. Mind-blowing as it was at the time, the original Switch had some glaring design flaws, most of which lasted the entire generation. I already mentioned the stand. It's truly pathetic. Like, did no one think to put a better stand in there? The best thing I can say about it is it sometimes works. But you get one angle and it's not very sturdy. It feels like it would snap right off if you look at it too hard. Oh shoot, I left a micro SD in there. That's going back in the drawer. It's still weird to me that this console basically has no identity on its own. It is just a screen. Even the dock, just a black hunk of plastic. 100% of this console's brand recognition is coming from the Joy-Cons. And surprisingly, it works. I much rather have the screen take up as much room as it can rather than some logo or design getting in the way. That said, after all the iterations we've received, the bezel on this thing is ridiculous. What is taking up all this room? The brightness sensor down there, the most underused part of the whole system? And docking the thing was always a little nerve-wracking. They never really fixed this part, but it always felt like you were doing it wrong. The feeling of having to wiggle it left and right to find the USB slot was like you might as well be scraping the screen with a razor. I don't know what goes on in those 3 seconds of confusion. Or maybe I just feel that way because of the Cat video. 28 million views. You know, I'll say this. Cat is a very talented editor. He can shape a narrative using only visuals super well. But most of his videos are just kind of dishonestly pointing a microscope at the negative side of things. People watched this and seriously thought every Switch that got sent out was just broken and the dock was cutting screens down the middle somehow. There's nothing in there that could possibly do that. But these soft little bumpers on the sides did mess up my bezel. After years of use, both sides have these similar scratches on them, and that can only be from the dock. I guess I should be glad the bezel was so big. The Switch 2 dock doesn't have bumpers in the front side at all. That is a clear, conscious tell that these things were probably a bad call in the first place. Though admittedly, I did get a pretty trashy screen protector. You can see it has the little Zelda squiggles in the corners. It was prioritizing looks over protection. I should have known. The Switch's lack of identity persists through its menus and UI. It's as basic as they come. Basic white, basic black. I can't believe the Switch 2 didn't even change this a little bit. One of the most disappointing things about it. You'll have people coming in arguing about how having themes messes with load times and makes the experience worse. I don't know, man. The themes we had on 3DS were so great, it was worth it to me. Worth it for the background music alone. At the very least, you could have let us just change the background color, right? Nope. Never. Just black and white. Well, if all the personality is in the Joy-Cons, let's talk about those. We love Joy-Cons, right? Right? Well, I love how they look. I love how they slide onto the system so satisfyingly. I love how they work as one controller or two, depending on how you hold them, and HD Rumble is really cool. But there are a lot of cons to this setup. We gotta address the elephant in the room. Little did we know there would be a worse hardware failure point than any of the stuff in Crobe Cat's video. Joy-Con drift swept the nation like an infectious disease just a few years into the Switch's life and remained a plague on all of us for the rest of the generation. Nintendo didn't handle the situation well, barely acknowledged it even, and many resorted to buying cheap repair kits off Amazon and replacing the joysticks themselves, providing that was even their issue. I myself did this, even made a video on this very channel showing my attempt.
This is like the first step. Look, I watched a video and the guy just kind of like popped this. Like, how much pressure should I do? Ugh. I think I got it. Uh-oh. Something is wrong. Something's wrong. We just botched the surgery. This thing's supposed to come out. But I ripped the whole...
I broke off a delicate latch and rendered the Joy-Con completely unusable. But the drift was so bad on this one, it basically was unusable already. I figured it was either this or nothing. I ended up giving the broken Joy-Con and repair kit away to my little cousin, who is a tinkerer known for taking apart his mom's phone and stuff like that. Figured he'd have some fun with it. I wonder if he even still has it. Anyway, the only problems with the Joy-Cons, besides the fact that they stop working correctly, have got to be their size and asymmetry. It doesn't feel great to use a single Joy-Con to do really anything. It's a sacrifice we make to be able to play multiplayer in a convenient way. The fact that you don't need to bring anything other than the console on a plane or something to easily be able to play a two-player game with the person next to you is really cool. But most of the time, you're at home wishing there was a better option. How did the horizontal Wii Remote rectangle somehow feel better than this? And if you're playing a 2D platformer, you're stuck using an analog stick, which never feels great. You gotta at least hope you get the left Joy-Con. That's more or less set up like a standard controller, but if you get the right Joy-Con, your analog stick is like in the middle of it, putting your thumb at a less natural angle. Much like the stand, the best thing you can say about it is, it works, except when it doesn't. But I'll give them credit for hiding the left and right triggers on the inside of the Joy-Cons and putting the bigger button extenders on the wrist straps. Very clever. Anyone else put those on the wrong way at first? I sure did. That was a scary moment on day one when everyone was messing around with the controllers and we stuck a minus side wrist strap on a plus Joy-Con and it would not budge for a while. We thought we broke it straight out of the box. That's one part that feels very un-Nintendo. A lot of these little pieces are quite unintuitive for a company that tries to make gaming as accessible as possible. Whenever I handed a Joy-Con to a family member to play something, they never really knew exactly what to do with it. How do I hold this thing? Why is it only half a controller? What the heck is SR and SL? I wouldn't even bother handing them the wrist straps. I'd set that up myself or just not give it to them at all. And oh my god, no one talks about this, but when you play a game with the whole family, and you're trying to tell them what button to press, but everyone has different buttons depending on which half of the controller they have, it's a nightmare. You gotta press A. I don't have A. Where's A? No, I mean right. That's not working. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's right if you hold it vertical, but it's down if you hold it horizontal. And then somebody else is like, I'm pressing down, but nothing's happening. No. If you have A, you press A. If you don't have A, you press down, but not down on the stick, down on the button. But only down if you're holding it the right way. Now, when you get to this part, you gotta press R. And then they press R on like the side of it. Or they say, I have L. No, I mean SR. And then they look on the controller. You mean ZR? No, on the top of it, it says SR. And then you look at the wrist straps, and they're not even labeled. The communication issue is so bad, it bleeds into the game design. This is when games stop saying press A to start. Instead, it now says press the rightmost dot on whatever 4-dot configuration you are currently using. Rolls right off the tongue. And God forbid you give the left Joy-Con to the wrong kid and he discovers the share button. It's all over after that. The Joy-Con 2s are bigger, more comfortable, and the SL/SR buttons stay labeled. But this issue still goes mostly unsolved. I never thought HD Rumble was as cool as I hoped it would be. Most people would say it never got any cooler than it was in the ball guessing minigame from 1-2 Switch, and I'd say they're pretty correct. It's fun in a lot of the games, but it rarely creates that wow factor they seemed to want. I remember the booth guy at the Switch 1 preview experience said that if I played Ribbon Girl in ARMS, HD Rumble made it feel like a roll of ribbons would leave the palm of my hand with every punch. It just didn't feel like that. I even squeezed the controller or pressed my palm against it, and I never exactly felt like what he was talking about. What impressed me much more later down the line was HD Rumble's ability to create sound. Golf Story is one that comes to mind. The HD Rumble effects are great throughout the game, but there's this one part where it screams at you for getting caught in the river, and for a while I didn't even realize it wasn't coming from the speakers, it was coming from the vibrating frequency of the controllers. That was kind of a wow moment. HD Rumble 2 is supposed to be even better, so I hope there are some more surprises in our future. Finally, the IR sensor, the second most unused part of the console. It let you eat hot dogs in 1-2 Switch, and it did some neat tricks when Labo came along. Otherwise, I can't think of a single thing any developer used this for. Those two things were cool, though. It's like the one hardware feature they didn't bring back for Switch 2. How sad. We'll never get hot dog eating contest again. So, we have flaws, certainly we do, but Nintendo Switch was still a magical little device. I was there day one, I had multiple drifting Joy-Cons, screen got a little scuffed up, and trying to tell my mom how to use it was a pain in the ass, but I have no regrets at all. They did later release a version that had better battery life, but honestly the battery life was never a problem for me. Could have used a little more, but it never cut me off too early or whatever. Battery was fine. $80 for a pair of Joy-Cons was egregious, especially considering the drift. $90 for a dock was even worse considering what that thing was, a hunk of plastic with an HDMI adapter. But $300 for the whole package was pretty reasonable. I did expect a price drop eventually. I still can't believe that never happened even after releasing the OLED. But problems aside, none of it really matters because it's all about the games. And, as they say, Nintendo Switch has games. I will now review all of the major Switch 1 games, mostly the ones I played, but I'll briefly go over some that I skipped just to talk about their significance and public reception. This is a full retrospective of the Switch's long life, at least up until its successor was released. We're still getting Switch games through 2026, though. So I'm curious about what the final nail in the coffin is truly gonna be. We got a long way to go, so let's start with the very first and one of the biggest games on the console. I'm calling this the very first because it's the only one that released simultaneously on Wii U, so you could technically play it before any of the other launch games. What do you say about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild? Such a game changer, literally sent fissures down the industry for years to come. Never mind reinventing Zelda, they practically reinvented the open world genre, and this was Nintendo's first real try at it. It influenced basically every open world game that followed, to the point where it started getting on everyone's nerves whenever a character in a trailer pulled out a paraglider. The Switch had many great things going for it, but Breath of the Wild was the main course at launch. Everyone was raving about it. It turned the internet into a school playground where everyone was sharing things they discovered and learning new things through sheer experimentation. It was the first time in a Nintendo game where you can kind of just do whatever you wanted. All the abilities you got were basically god-powered toys that made interacting with the world stupidly fun. So many old hat Zelda traditions were broken, like having to find bigger bags just so you can hold more money, or even needing a bag for bombs. You can just spawn bombs infinitely out of thin air now. To a Zelda fan, that's already huge, but it's not even scratching the surface of the ambition of this game. The so-called chemistry engine, where every aspect of this world is interactable with each other, allowing the player to experiment seemingly endlessly with what they could do to solve any given problem. In an old Zelda game, or really most games, if you try entering the ice-cold mountain area and start losing health, that communicates you need to find a special suit or something that lets you come here. You're not allowed to be here right now. But in Breath of the Wild, there are none of those rules. There does exist a special suit you can find that'll let you withstand the cold, but you could also just eat a bunch of hot peppers to offset the cold, or you can just carry around a big fire sword that's toasty enough to keep you warm, or you can ignore the cold and just bring as many healing items as you can to get to where you need to be. It doesn't matter how stupid your plan is, it's all viable, and that's kind of the whole point of this game. Any spot on the map is accessible as soon as you make it out of the opening, including, famously, the final boss. But character progression is tied to exploring as much as possible before going there. Shrines replace what we knew as dungeons, instead of having a handful of these big temples with elaborate puzzles that you spend a long time in, potentially getting lost, backtracking through rooms, fighting enemies you've already fought. They basically took each room in those dungeons and sprinkled 120 of them across the world. Now it's a more compact and efficient experience. You walk in, there's a puzzle, you solve it, feel clever, and then you're out. This is where Breath of the Wild starts leaning into controversy. Controversy that has not left discussion around this game since its release. Once the sheer wonder and amazement wears off, which may take a while, if you're a longtime Zelda fan, you start to miss a lot of things. Shrines are fun, but they don't exactly scratch the same itch those big dungeons used to. We have 4 bigger dungeon-like temples in the Divine Beasts, but they keep up the game's philosophy of feeling like a natural formation you can find any way through. Still not quite the same. It starts to feel like Breath of the Wild isn't as much an evolution of Zelda as it is just a plain entirely different thing. It's not that we don't like it, it's just not a replacement for what we had. The biggest question at the time was, is this just what Zelda is now? Will we ever see anything like Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, or Twilight Princess ever again? Or will that be seen as too much of a step backwards? And, well, we kind of got our answer with the next one. So I guess we'll pick up this topic again when we get there. One thing I do genuinely feel burned by in regards to Breath of the Wild was how the story was essentially nothing. The 2017 Switch presentation trailer was so amazing that they put the song from it in Smash. It's like one of the most hyped trailers I've ever seen. The shot I'll always remember most is this one right here, where Zelda is crying hysterically and she falls into Link's arms in the rain. If you weren't a Zelda fan before, you probably don't understand how big a deal this is. Zelda games have stories, but they don't usually have a lot of depth, certainly not from a character relationship perspective, though the most we've seen so far was in the previous game, Skyward Sword. So to see this level of emotion coming from characters who are usually barely expressing emotion at all, tied together with all these other shots of Link interacting with new characters along the way, it filled our heads with imagination. Is this gonna be a deep story? Is Link gonna be interacting with Zelda throughout it for once? What transpires over the course of this game to get us to a scene like this? The answers to those questions in order are no, no, and nothing. Breath of the Wild is the least story-driven game in the series since the NES. Almost every scene in this trailer is taken from the few flashbacks you see when finding a spot that triggers a memory. These disconnected cutscenes help you piece together the backstory of this Hyrule, but none of those characters are ones you can actually talk to at all over the actual game, including Zelda. It's such a generational leap forward in game design, but the story felt sacrificed, monkey's paw style, to make it happen. And it also felt a little dishonest, hyping us up with all that when in reality we can't experience any of it firsthand in the game. That scene with Zelda crying is just another flashback, but due to the nature of the game, I can't actually get to know this Zelda and care about her the way I did in Skyward Sword. And this game wouldn't be as mind-blowing as it was if they stuck a big linear story into the middle of it. So there's no best of both worlds in this case, you gotta pick one. And that's just another reason why Breath of the Wild is still a hot topic. If this is the only kind of Zelda game we get ever again, I'm always gonna play them and have fun, but I'm always gonna feel like I've lost something that I'm never getting back. To be continued, let's move on to another game that's just as important to the industry. We all have our gamer regrets, a collector's edition we didn't need, a library of Steam games unplayed. But for me, spending $50 on 1-2 Switch was probably the biggest waste of money I'm ashamed to admit to. You guys are freaking out over Switch 2 Welcome Tour being $10? Bro, 1-2 Switch isn't even a video game. It literally does not have graphics. It is a collection of like 12 videos featuring stock photo actors pretending to play a game, and then it tells you to pretend to play a game, and that's the game. There isn't even like a menu outside of shuffling between these videos. This game is so insultingly nothing. It would be insulting even as a pack-in game. Why did I buy it? Because I desperately wanted that day one out of the box goofing around with friends. I wanted it so much I was willing to pay $50 more for it. And you know what? 1-2 Switch did kind of provide me with that. I can truthfully say it gave me the value I was looking for out of it. I didn't play 1-2 Switch very much outside of that first day, as you can imagine. When someone new came over or I brought the Switch to someone's house, I might boot it up just to get their first time reaction to it. We would always share some laughs, but everyone would react the same way. They would ask, "You paid actual money for this?" And once I got through those first time reactions, nobody ever desired to play it again. Especially after Switch started getting real party games. The ball guessing minigame, as I mentioned before, is the highlight. With the power of HD Rumble, they really do make it feel like the Joy-Cons got marbles rolling around in there. It always got the biggest reaction. Most of the other games leave something to be desired. Pound your chest like a gorilla. Strike a pose and have your opponent copy it. Eat hot dogs fast. The sword one was kind of fun. You each have a health bar and have to cut the other player while they aren't blocking, but someone always ends up saying, "How'd that hit me?" Or "I was blocking," or complaining about something. I really wasn't a fan of how much this game wanted you to stare into your opponent's eyes. That was like the main gimmick. No one wants to do that. It's awkward, but you can't look at the screen because there's no graphics. Anyway, yeah, 1-2 Switch, it sure was something. I wish we went on to get more Snipper Clips. It did get DLC in the form of Snipper Clips Plus, which added a bunch of new levels and gimmicks. But of all the launch games, this got the least buzz. It was such a clever little game where you were two pieces of paper cutting each other into shapes that help you solve puzzles. Becoming a hook was the solution to like most of them, but it was still a fun co-op game. There's even a battle mode and a 4-player mode, which gets really chaotic. And we actually got a fun HD Rumble feature here. When a player stands on top of you, every footstep they take sends a little nudge to your controller. That was a great detail. I'm not going to spend too much time on enhanced ports, as there are a lot of them, and I pretty much got none of them. Whenever a port came out, I'd usually say something like, "I'm cashing in my Wii U card," by not buying it. This was a way for me to feel like I really got something out of my Wii U, even though nearly every first-party game for that system was eventually ported to Switch as a superior version. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is just Mario Kart 8 with the DLC included and other improvements like an actual battle mode. Probably the biggest complaint about the original Mario Kart 8 was for some reason they thought it was okay to just have battle mode take place on normal racetracks. Like, I guess they spent the dev time on other things and didn't want to leave out the mode, so they put in an incredibly low effort version of it. Well, no longer. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has actual maps for its battle mode, but its greatest new feature is being on a console that people owned. It's no secret that this game is one of the best-selling video games of all time. I know multiple people who own Switches solely as Mario Kart machines. They wouldn't even call themselves gamers. It's literally just because Mario Kart is mainstream enough for everyone to enjoy, and they can have it set up at parties or other get-togethers. It's truly an anomaly compared to every other game we're talking about today. It almost transcends the console. People who want to play all the high-quality first-party Nintendo games and more with portability, and people who want to play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It was so successful, we blamed it for not letting us have a new Mario Kart game for an entire generation. It was Nintendo's GTA 5. Nintendo themselves realized this and started releasing more DLC for it like 5 years later, eventually stuffing this game with like double the tracks it originally had. There is no Mario Kart game with nearly as much content as 8 Deluxe, including the brand new one that just came out. Some of those tracks looked really fun. I was sad I didn't get to see those, but at that point I knew we were getting a new game eventually in the future, so I held out. I don't know if I love Mario Kart World. It does a lot of incredible new things for the series, but after all that DLC, it feels much smaller than 8 Deluxe, even with its open world. But the great thing is, we have both. Two Mario Kart giants on one console. Here is the first of many cases where most of us said, oh, that's $60? No thanks. One of the worst trends Nintendo started in this era. ARMS is a fun gimmick fighting game that did have its fans, but it didn't have the legs to stand on to become a phenomenon. I played the global test demo and got my fill with it. It didn't feel like a full-priced game unless the full version was gonna have a bunch more content. It didn't. It was just choose the map, choose your fighter, fight. There was a good amount of post-launch free DLC, but nothing substantial, just more maps and characters. And thus, ARMS faded into obscurity, until Smash Bros. Brought it back a little. Splatoon had about as good a start as it could have on Wii U. All the sequel had to do was have more stuff. And that's pretty much what it did. They could have gave us a deluxe version of the first one, but they added a lot more to justify the sequelness in Splatoon 2. Not just new weapons and maps and refined mechanics, a deeper single-player mode, a new city, new characters, and a co-op mode in the form of Salmon Run. I was really tempted to get this one, but I'm just not much of a multiplayer guy. It looked great, but I knew it was not something I'd play much. Just like Mario Kart 8, I played enough on Wii U. But then that Octo expansion came out, adding an even deeper single-player campaign with RPG elements and stuff, and oh, I was really tempted. For some reason, I convinced myself that they would release that as a standalone title. I don't know why, but yeah, they never did that. I couldn't justify buying the $60 game plus the $20 DLC just for that campaign. But I've been itching to check out Splatoon again after taking a generation-long break from it. Another fighting game that didn't get a lot of love. I think the concept of Pokken Tournament DX is pretty cool, and the more realistic looking Pokemon fit the cool factor they're going for, but another mostly online multiplayer game I wasn't gonna play for more than a few hours. Didn't get it on Wii U, didn't get it on Switch, didn't hear much about it after. Fire Emblem Warriors? It's Dynasty Warriors with Fire Emblem. Boring with boring. Next one. Alright, settle in. It's another big one. Super Mario Odyssey is wonderful, but I got a few problems with it. I think every Mario fan pretty much does. It is not a perfect example of the franchise when you dig into it, but it's not as controversial as Breath of the Wild is to Zelda. This game did what Breath of the Wild did to a lesser extent. It definitely brought the series forward and kind of reshaped how we play Super Mario. A collection of open worlds far bigger than the courses we're used to, with the player allowed to explore it all freely. Plus a new movement system that feels better to control than ever before. It had been 7 years since Super Mario Galaxy 2, which most would consider the last real 3D Mario game, so this is exactly what the doctor ordered. A return to form that's still innovative. It was also just plain creative. We were only now starting to dig ourselves out of the hole that was brand synergy stock Mario. The era where it seemed like there was this rule at Nintendo that prevented them from introducing any new species or environments, basically the new Super Mario Bros. Era. And now all of a sudden there's a realistic T-Rex and dragon in this one, not to mention the New York City inspired level with actual humans walking around whom you can possess. It was just so much new at once. I loved playing through it, but by the end I didn't think it quite lived up to the older 3D games. I want to go back to the Nintendo Switch 2017 presentation for a second, because the thing that got me the most excited was this chart they showed. The fact that Nintendo themselves drew this line to separate true 3D Mario from Mario games that are 3D, and that Odyssey was gonna be a new entry in the red line. Even I would count the Galaxy games as true 3D, but no, they were serious about this. It will specifically be like these two games, not those. It was music to my ears. And the first thing I thought after playing the game for a bit was, wait, where's the hub world? There's no hub world. Even the Galaxy games technically have a hub world. In reality, Odyssey doesn't play like those two red line Marios any more than it doesn't play like those yellow line ones. Still fun, but I couldn't help being really disappointed that I didn't actually get what was advertised. For me, the hub world is so important to the identity of Mario 64 and Sunshine. What are those games without Peach's Castle and Delfino Plaza? But it wasn't just about the hub world. The gameplay that those two games have in common is pretty specific. It's about going to a handful of areas multiple times to collect a star or shine in a different way than you did last time. Maybe the area would be changed, maybe it wouldn't. Maybe you could get a star for one mission while you technically selected the star for another mission. Whatever works. And then you have the hub area on top, which basically acts as its own level with its own secret collectibles. That, to me, is 3D Mario. The Galaxy games are more like a halfway between yellow and red line Mario. Their hub worlds don't have much going on, and instead of having around 8 stars to collect in one level, it's more like 3 per level, and there are just a lot more levels. Mario Odyssey takes the opposite direction. It's like halfway between the red line and whatever's next, like a true, full-on, single open world Mario game. In Odyssey, there are less levels, but a lot more stars. A lot more stars. Moons. You collect moons in this one. That change makes it a totally different vibe than 64 and Sunshine. And the moons become less valuable than stars and shines because you end up finding them everywhere you look. The Mario economy suffers from major inflation in Odyssey. If you ground pound the right spot, you get a moon. If you walk in a circle over here, you get a moon. If you talk to this toad, you get a moon. And if you beat the boss at the end of this course, you just get 3 moons tied together? The whole collectible side of this game just feels unbalanced. Like if Mario Sunshine only had blue coins to collect and no shines. I don't think that'd go over very well. So that's my stance on Super Mario Odyssey. It's still totally fun in its own way to try and hunt down every last moon in these wide open maps. I would love a sequel to it the same way I'd like another Galaxy game. But I want a Sunshine or 64 sequel, a real one, more than anything. In a year of so many surprises, I don't think anything tops this. I still remember watching Ubisoft's E3 show, never expecting anything more than the usual cringy jokes and Assassin's Creed. But we get Miyamoto on stage with a laser gun talking about a new Mario game. It was actually leaked a few days before, but the concept was so unbelievable that it was still enough for everyone to doubt the legitimacy of the reports. An XCOM-style tactical RPG where Mario teams up with shovelware mascots to shoot things with guns. And it ended up being extremely good. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle is a Ubisoft game that actually conveys passion. Like a real team of creatively driven humans made this game as best they could. An RPG that incorporates Mario's basic abilities into its combat system in a unique way. Yoshi and Peach are playable. They got Grant Kirkhope on the soundtrack. I really can't recommend this game enough. And it's not just combat, there's even a sprinkle of exploration, collecting, and puzzle solving. It's really my kind of game. Then we got a whole expansion starring DK with its own unique play style. Yeah, all I can say is if you were turned off by the Rabbids or that Ubisoft logo in general, I totally get it, but this is a great game. The Rabbids' existence is probably the only negative thing about it. Like, imagine if they weren't there. Imagine if this was just a cool Mario RPG, or if it was a crossover with literally anyone else. But you know what? It's worth sitting through Rabid Peach taking selfies or whatever, because that's 5% of the game. And the other 95% is beautiful. I didn't play Xenoblade Chronicles 2 because I hadn't played the first one at the time. I heard a lot of mixed things. Apparently there's like a gacha battle system. I don't really know what that means, and I'm afraid to ask. What I did notice about it is how much more it seemed to lean into the cringy anime side. When you tell me your game or story has the my weapon is actually an anime girl waifu angle, I immediately check out. That wasn't in the first one, so I don't know why it's a thing now. But anyway, most Xenoblade fans liked it, so I'm glad for them. It got a DLC expansion that was so big they did make that one a standalone game you could buy, and I think it ties the story back to the first game much more. I'm talking out of my ass though, so I'm gonna move on to the next year. Between this massive RPG, a brand new Mario, a brand new Zelda, and everything else in between, this was one of the craziest launched years in history. They hit the ground running, and the stage was set, as well as it could possibly be, for a successful generation. Kirby makes his Switch debut with a classic platformer we haven't seen on a home console since the Wii. I'm always gonna get a new Kirby game. I'm a ride or die fan, and this was a solid one, but it was just not the Kirby game we needed at the time. You look at Zelda and Mario taking these big leaps forward, while Kirby Star Allies feels no different than that game on the Wii. It wasn't even better than the 3DS entries, Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, and I felt that sentiment with the rest of the fandom at the time. It didn't have a super fun side mode, just 2 random mini games, and a mode that let you run through a condensed version of the main game as any character. They made it a sort of celebration of Kirby's history, getting additional DLC characters for free in the year after it was released. As a longtime fan, it was really fun to see some of those characters come back after being abandoned for so long, but after 100%ing the game, there was nothing for me to do with them when they came out. The third wave of DLC did come with a big expansion that expanded on the lore established in the base game, and that was free too, so the overall package did end up being a better value than when it started. Lore is a more prominent part of Star Allies than usual for Kirby games, which is another way it stands out. It's the first game to make some major implications about what Kirby is, and fans go crazy for that sort of thing. They also went crazy for the secret boss of this one. That was an unbelievable twist. So it's pretty good, but we've been begging for something like a 3D Kirby game for a decade, and I really thought this was gonna be the one. Maybe next time. Oh, it's cardboard time. There were 4 Nintendo Labo kits released across 2018 and 19, but I'll loop the discussion into here. What a funny, very Nintendo thing to do. It was up there with the biggest Nintendo laughing stocks of the generation, with most critics sharing the same take of $70 to $80 for cardboard? But in my opinion, that's just not really a fair take. That's like making fun of someone for buying a Lego product because they paid $80 for plastic. Like, yeah, I guess you're right, but it's not as weird as you think it is. These are toys, like Lego, and they're fun to play with. There's no shame in that. It was a steep price though, and that's probably why the Labo kits were some of the worst selling Nintendo games of its lifetime. I couldn't justify shelling out for the giant robot kit or the variety kit at the time, but this type of whimsy and weirdness is what I love Nintendo for. I really wanted to try it out in some form. The 4th and last Toy Con was the VR Big Gun kit that was priced at a very reasonable $40, so I dove in. VR gaming for $40? How cool is that? And there were some other attachments you can buy, like the one where you shove your face into a bird's ass, but I just stuck with the gun. First off, building this thing was so much fun, and it is complex. It took way longer than I was expecting. And the game comes with a full 3D guide that shows you what to do every step of the way and even teaches you the functions of everything. This is the ultimate kid's toy. Not only is it more fun to build than a Lego set, but it's something you can actually play with when you're done. A couple years later, I picked up the Valve Index. I wanted to go all in and get the state-of-the-art VR to play Half-Life Alyx, and so one day my cousins came over and we were playing some silly co-op VR games where one person was on the computer and one's in the headset, as well as some single player games like Half-Life Alyx, just so I could scare them. But then the youngest one saw the big cardboard gun in my closet and wanted to try that. So I fired up Labo VR. He had more fun with this thing than he did with the $1,000 price tag brand new tech. And I think that says a lot. You can't charge up and pull a physical trigger when you're playing Half-Life Alyx. Oh yeah, and Smash Ultimate got a free update that lets you play it in VR, remember that? In a generation full of us complaining about Nintendo overcharging for small experiences, this was the one example of the total opposite. And these kits are sadly going to be lost to time. Even in the extremely unlikely case they bring Labo back for Switch 2, those Joy-Cons don't got IR sensors. Half of these devices operate on those IR sensors. I got nostalgic remembering my time with Labo, so I looked up how much they go for now, and yeah, prices have at least doubled since then. I think these will go down in history as rare Nintendo memorabilia. Now I wish I got the others. Well, not really, because I don't know where I'd put all that crap. They put Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Switch. Remember New Funky Mode? Remember when that was the funniest thing ever? They put Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition on Switch, and they still didn't add Groose after all that. And they put Mario Sports on the Switch. The beginning of a series of sports-related disappointments. This was a weird cycle to witness within the Nintendo community because it was the exact same thing every time. A new Mario sports game trailer, it makes it look really exciting for some reason. That reason gets blown out of proportion in the marketing and fan reaction, and then the game comes out, and it's just Mario playing a sport. And for some reason, people are surprised. Mario Tennis Aces lured fans in with the promise of a crazy, almost anime-like story mode. Well, it didn't actually promise that, they just showed us a cool opening cutscene and fans let their imaginations run too wild. It is just a tennis game, but it helps that it was running off the back of Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, probably the most generic Mario sports title ever. It seemed much more fun than that, and it got some free characters added on later. Just overall not a lot of content, and I'm not into tennis, so it was an easy pass for me. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker is a lovely little puzzle game you should definitely play if you're a fan of such games. It was a $40 budget title, one of the last of its kind on Wii U, and it was more than worth the price. In this version, they added new levels based on Mario Odyssey, and I wish I got to play that, but I didn't want to buy the game again to do it. Yes, this is a pattern for me. We have to take a brief pause right now to talk about something that's not a game, but a very important part of the Switch's life, Nintendo Switch Online, which made its debut this year in what many would call a low point of the generation. It was inevitable, though. PlayStation started doing it with the PS4, so Nintendo was the odd one out. They were just leaving money on the table. It really sucks that we have PC to prove that it's not necessary for consumers to pay to play video games online, but now every console gamer is forced to do it. You could pay $60 for a primarily online game, but you'll essentially lose access to it unless you keep paying a subscription. On the bright side, it is $20 for a year of NSO, opposed to Xbox and PlayStation's $80. And you can even cut the cost further by setting up a family plan with some friends, which I know a lot of people do. I personally just don't pay for it at all. I got a year when Smash Bros came out and had some good fun with it, but didn't need to continue. The NES, SNES, and Game Boy libraries took a while to get going, but there's definitely a lot of value there for those uninitiated with the classics. Then there's the occasional Tetris 99, F-Zero 99, or Super Mario Bros 35. As long as they don't shut them down for no reason later. Oh, and a recent addition, Nintendo Music, is actually a really cool bonus. It's nice that they continue to add stuff to make the subscription more worth it. Hopefully that doesn't mean we're gonna get a price increase too soon from now, but it is a pretty good value as is. I just don't feel like paying for it. It sucks when a friend wants to get back on Smash Ultimate for a couple rounds and I gotta be like, I don't have online and I don't want to buy it just for like the 1 hour we're gonna play today. The Switch 2 is introducing game chat as another feature added to online, and I really predict that nobody is going to use this, so I guess it's technically added value, but not really. Ooh, this year also gave us another low point when we all witnessed the bewildering announcement that Resident Evil 7 Biohazard was coming to Nintendo Switch as a cloud version. A small handful of third-party games went on to join Resident Evil 7 as Switch Cloud games. Full-priced games that can only be played when connected online and gave players various problems like frame drops or input lag. Nobody wanted to play a game like this, especially on a Nintendo console, but as a solution for games that definitely couldn't run, I guess it was better than nothing. The most confusing one was when Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 plus 2.5 was announced, finally coming to Nintendo for the first time as a cloud version. Kingdom Hearts 1 from the PS2. They said in an interview it was because of a lack of storage space, which I guess is fair. That is a lot of games in one, but just split them up. If you have to, right? Surely there were better solutions than this. It's been a while since a cloud version has been announced for Switch. Hopefully they're a thing of the past. The really awkward part now is that all these games should probably be able to run on Switch 2, right? But you can go to the Switch 2 eShop right now and buy these cloud versions still. So when they inevitably make an actual port of a game like Resident Evil 7 Biohazard or Kingdom Hearts 3, what's going to happen to those versions? Will the cloud gamers get that version free of charge? Or at least for a $10 upgrade or something? I'd personally be mad if it didn't, but I didn't buy any of these cloud versions because that was just gonna be a mistake. Let's get back to the games. Another franchise takes a much needed step forward on Switch here. Mario Party 9 and 10 can safely be described as the dark era of Mario Party for most people. It's just one of those instances where Nintendo tries something and everyone says no, and then they keep pushing it and everyone's like no, and eventually they just give us what we want again. Super Mario Party isn't even entirely a return to form, but it does feature a classic board game mode with slightly different features. That was good enough for me. I got a good amount of playtime out of this between college and family, and I didn't expect the whitewater rafting mode to be the highlight, but it was. This is how you put everyone in one vehicle and still make it fun. Send them falling down a river and force them to argue about which direction to row so they're all yelling and screaming before ending up going the wrong way. Oh, and also this had that one minigame that ridiculously required another console with the game for it to even work. I'm privileged to say I did play that minigame with another friend from college who had it. It was kinda fun for a few minutes. Definitely the sort of game you just play for the novelty and then never go back. And I'll also give this one credit for having a bit of single player content. There are a surprising amount of achievements to unlock that I was tempted to go for but never followed through. You can almost make yourself a little campaign out of it. I was a fan of this new direction for Mario Party. We'll see how it compared to the others that came out for this system. I was kinda dropping off of Pokémon when Pokémon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee came out. I was excited to see the next main game be on a home console and HD for the first time, but this just felt like filler to take up a release slot in the meantime. And the Pokemon Go-ification of it was just strange to me. Was this whole project started over the legendary Pokemon Go summer of 2016? Well, by now I didn't even have the app on my phone, so there was just nothing here for me. Pokemon Red again, but HD, alright. Taking 2018 out with the biggest bang possible. Oh man, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Nothing else even mattered this year. We already knew Sakurai was a game dev god, but he had to remind us by pulling off the impossible with this game's roster. So many long nights playing Smash Wii U with friends, and that thing was out the window as soon as this dropped. It felt so much better to play, there was so much more content, including a story mode again, finally. I do miss all the cutscenes and larger narrative we got with the Subspace Emissary and Brawl, but World of Light was still really fun. I particularly love how the spirit system modified matches to make it feel like you were fighting characters who weren't actually playable. Really clever. There's always some mechanic or mode added to Smash that no one ever really bothers with, and it feels like a waste of development time, but Spirits never failed to give me a chuckle whenever I understood the reference they were going for. My number one pick, pie in the sky character that will never happen, was Sora from Kingdom Hearts. My number one realistic pick that I thought had somewhat of a chance was King K. Rool. So I was pretty darn satisfied with the roster we got. I mean, do you even like video games if there isn't a character in this roster that appeals to you? It was such a rush to speculate on who could be coming next. This game confirmed to me that the marketing is like half of the fun of the Super Smash Bros. Experience. And that's okay. The cinematic trailers, the Sakurai Presents showcases, and all the hype leading up to them made up for the lack of a big Subspace Emissary movie. One of my best memories of Smash Ultimate had to be launch night. We were getting ready for the midnight release while the Game Awards were going on. My friend, who was a massive Persona 5 fan, came walking down the stairs half asleep while Joker and his squad appeared for some big announcement. And we were all like, yo, look, what is this? What the heck is this? Look, it's Joker. And he flips that envelope around. It's the Smash logo. We go crazy. He's still like half asleep and doesn't know what's real. And this was the beginning of a multi-year hype train of Smash announcements. We didn't even know DLC was coming. No one expected anything like that since the game was only launching in a few hours. I hadn't even played Persona at the time, but it was too hype. We picked up the game at midnight. I finally got a Switch Pro controller, and we literally played that game until the sun came up. It was so good. That series of events is everything Smash Bros. Is to me. And even when a DLC character came out from a franchise I didn't care about, it was always a big deal, unless it was Fire Emblem. Plus, it honestly didn't matter who else got put in, because in the end, I got my boy.
It's not Sora. But what is it? No way! I can't believe it. Oh my god!
Fitness boxing? You're not Wii Fit Trainer. This was a weirdly timed January release. New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. At least it was, until I realized it was 100% a bait release if I ever saw one. I swear they intentionally put this out before letting us know about 2 months later we'd be getting Super Mario Maker 2 very soon. I bought this on Wii U launch day, so I wasn't about to double dip when the only thing they added was Peachette. We don't need to talk about Peachette. But of the tired, generic new Super Mario Bros. Series, this is pretty definitively the best one. However, you can no longer torture your friends with the Wii U gamepad platform creating thing. So what's even the point anymore? I'm struggling to remember much about Yoshi's Crafted World. I liked Woolly World, and this seemed like an even better version of it with more mechanics and even craftier environments. But I don't know. It's just one of those platformers you go through and mostly enjoy, but you're not gonna think about it much after that. I remember being a little annoyed about how many times I had to repeat levels to make sure I collected everything. And there was one cool level that was horror themed, like it had jump scares in a Yoshi game. It was really funny to me. I'm a big Box Boy fan. I actually played through the original trilogy on 3DS in preparation for Box Boy plus Box Girl. The series is a very minimalistic, basic box-based puzzle platformer, but they're dirt cheap and they still have that HAL Laboratory charm. We thought the series was over after the conclusive sounding Bye Bye Box Boy, but it made it to Switch with an emphasis on co-op. You could also play as Rectangle Boy in his own collection of levels. That's some real groundbreaking stuff. Man, we do not talk about Cadence of Hyrule enough. Nintendo got with an indie game studio and just let them make their own Zelda game. That has never happened before or since. What a dream come true for the devs and the players. I hadn't even played Crypt of the Necrodancer before this, but the idea was always interesting to me. It was the day one buy just for the precedent of indie Zelda. If you don't know how Crypt of the Necrodancer works, it's a rhythm-based roguelike dungeon crawler where you move on a grid similar to a mystery dungeon game, but if you tap to the beat, you get bonuses. Everything else in the world moves perfectly with the beat, so if you get thrown off, you'll suffer the consequences. Cadence of Hyrule is unique in that it has an explorable open world map taken right from A Link to the Past. The devs are clearly big fans, and they melded these two styles of game extremely well. If you took the rhythm stuff out, it would feel exactly like a new 2D Zelda with item collecting, puzzle solving, and heart piece hunting and all that. There is an original story starring a new character, but it's not really the focus. It scratched the classic Zelda itch that I had since Breath of the Wild, but it also had a new weird gameplay gimmick that hooked me. Oh yeah, I should mention, it uses classic Zelda tracks for all the rhythm-based gameplay, which is amazing. They later released the Symphony of the Mask DLC that was specifically catered to all those Majora's Mask fans like myself. This game is kind of a miracle. I would absolutely love for Nintendo to keep doing this sort of thing with other indie studios, but it doesn't look like they are, unfortunately. I was gonna cash in my Wii U card yet again for this one, but when they told me this time we were getting a full campaign mode with levels made by the team at Nintendo, they got me. Super Mario Maker 2 has all the fun of the original, with more. The utility of the Wii U gamepad is unfortunately gone, but as a machine for unlimited Mario levels, this game is just about everything you could hope for. That official single-player campaign wasn't all I hyped it up to be, but it was fun enough. I ended up having a lot more fun with the other modes, like the one where it creates a little mini campaign for you out of the other players' levels and challenges you to get through to the end. Doing that on the hardest difficulty should have just been called Impossible Mode because it was 10 straight levels, exactly like that one with a billion fire poles spinning around. You know that one? Medium to hard was the sweet spot. What I really didn't expect for this was it was probably the most fun I had with competitive multiplayer on the entire system. I could spend hours just joining random games and racing people to the finish while we were all completely blind to what the heck the level had in store for us. Always gotta check for a hidden block at the beginning the creator used to skip everything. Those cheap bastards did that all the time. I wonder if anyone's still playing this. For some reason it didn't have the lifespan that the Wii U original had. There were only a few updates and they just stopped. I really thought they were gonna go bigger with it, but I think I got my money's worth. It was a blast. Now, it's my understanding Fire Emblem Three Houses was an innovative step forward for this franchise, just as we've seen for some others so far. I remember hearing pretty great things about it from Fire Emblem fans, but I'm not a Fire Emblem fan, so I can't really tell you for sure. It does feel like for a long while, Nintendo was going so hard with Fire Emblem like it was one of their top 3 franchises, we couldn't escape it. But once this game came out, and its subsequent DLC, it kind of stopped. I think the series had tons of momentum on the 3DS, but by now that console was dead and the Switch was all we had. Fire Emblem Three Houses was a huge success for the series, but once its time in the limelight was over, I stopped hearing about Fire Emblem all that much. Maybe this is all in my head. Again, I don't exactly have my ear to the ground on this series or its fandom, but I'm talking even in Nintendo Directs, we'll get like a trailer and then it comes out and we're immediately moving on. They can't escape the Smash Bros. DLC though. Point is, Three Houses, from my point of view, was the last universally praised Fire Emblem game, and I don't really know what the series is doing currently. I guess we'll see what comes next. Oh gosh, another game I skipped. Astral Chain continues Platinum Games' partnership with Nintendo in a hack and slash RPG where you play as a cop. Or like 2 cops chained together or something. Seemed to me like if you enjoy Platinum Games, you'll enjoy this too. It sold pretty well. Wait, really it did? Ah, okay, well good for them. 3 skipped games in a row, oof. Okay, you can't blame me because who played this one? Who played Daemon X Machina? Who's Daemon? It looked like a cool Armored Core type game, but with a much more anime angle. That's really where you lose me. I don't care much about mechs, but then you make it anime mechs and I'm clocking out. I really enjoyed watching people's reaction to the recent Switch 2 Direct because I saw more than one person say, wow, they're porting Daemon X Machina, that's cool, while watching the trailer for a clearly brand new sequel. But most people don't know this franchise or don't even care enough to realize that it was a sequel. Sorry, I don't mean to poke fun at less popular stuff. I'm very happy for the fans of this getting a big sequel because I don't think Daemon X Machina sold super well, and it wasn't a big critical success either, but against all odds, we got a big Switch 2 sequel. That's nice. If you didn't know, I'm a dedicated Kirby fan to a fault. Before reviewing every Final Fantasy, I actually reviewed every Kirby game in its own ranking video, but I played these games over the course of my whole life. It was just one day I realized I had 100% completion in nearly every Kirby game ever made, so I tracked down the ones I missed, and since then I've committed to doing the same for every Kirby game that comes out. Unfortunately, there are a few massive time sinks in this series. One of them was Team Kirby Clash Deluxe on 3DS. It featured a mobile game style stamina bar that fills using real world minutes and hours. Every few minutes an apple is added to the tree and you use the apples to buy weapons and armor to fight bosses. Of course, you can pay real money to speed up that bar. This wasn't released for mobile phones, it was released for 3DS. And for some reason, it got an expanded sequel for Switch called Super Kirby Clash. This was the same idea, but with way more stuff to buy. Very expensive stuff to buy. I did the math and found out to get true completion this time would require real life years of checking in and collecting my apples. So that's what I did. Once I burned through and got the highest rank on every boss, there was no game left to play, but there were still items to buy. What a colossal waste of time that was. Is this game fun? Kinda. I mean, it's just a bunch of bosses. No copy abilities besides Hammer Guy, Sword Guy, Medic, or Time Mage. It was fun enough for a free game, but that completion requirement was so unnecessary. Here was another game that sparked the Nintendo pricing debate. A remake of a Game Boy game. A very pretty one, but still a Game Boy game at its core with very little additional content that cost the same amount as the enormous brand new generation system seller, the latest entry in the franchise. Link's Awakening is a fantastic game, but I played it already for $13 on the 3DS and did not need to do it again for $60 just to see it in HD. I actually think the vibe of the original is lost in this version. The Game Boy had such a specific aesthetic for almost all its games that fit perfectly, especially when they were going for a dreamy and weird angle, which this game obviously does. Now everything looks like a toy, which kind of lends itself to the dreamy atmosphere, but not in the same way. The original Link's Awakening was more mysterious than it was cute, and some of that is gone here. The one new feature they added was this dungeon scrambler thing that shuffled rooms together and created a procedurally generated dungeon for you to play. I'm not sure what the point of it was, or if you were rewarded with anything for completing said dungeons, but I do remember everyone freaking out because it looked like a Zelda maker, and then being disappointed when it very much was not. I would still recommend this game if you never played Link's Awakening, but on the other hand, Link's Awakening DX is available on NSO, so you could just play that instead. Along with Link's Awakening, we got our second iteration of the console, the Nintendo Switch Lite. This is a really nice device that I don't think ever got the praise it deserved. As opposed to other similar budget versions of consoles that sacrifice power or hardware components like disk drives, this is the exact same console for $100 less. The only catch is that this Switch can't switch. It can't dock and play games on your TV. But if you're primarily playing single-player Nintendo games portably, it's actually both cheaper and a better system than the original. The screen is a little smaller, but if the OG Switch couldn't fit in your pocket, this one probably could. The games might look a little crisper because of the screen size. And best of all, you don't get the wobbliness that comes with playing games with detachable controllers. These are locked in there for the smoothest experience possible, which also makes room for the absolute best feature, the D-pad. I can't believe they took you away last time. I still think they could have made the bezel less thick, but at least you don't have that brightness sensor anymore. You'll have to live on without brightness auto adjust. How will you manage? I picked up my Switch Lite post-college when I was commuting on the train to work. I played Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 on there, and a few others. Was it really worth buying if you already had a Switch? Nah. But I'm a sucker for that new hardware, especially if it's relatively cheap. In this day and age, we may never see a video game console sell for $200 ever again. You can even play Metroid Prime 4 Beyond on this thing, man. That's the cheapest entry into modern gaming there is. Great system, great value, even fixed a few things wrong with the first one. I got really no complaints about Switch Lite. Professor Layton is a series that always gets away from me. I love puzzle games, but for one reason or another, I never played any of these. Layton's Mystery Journey, Catriel and the Millionaire's Conspiracy Deluxe Edition didn't look like the best place to start. This time you played as Lady Layton. I don't know how different that makes the game, but reviews didn't all seem to love this version in particular. It's a deluxe port of the 3DS game with a bunch of new puzzles, but now that we seem to have a big new game coming soon, maybe I'll wait for that one. Fitness Boxing didn't kill Wii Fit Trainer, but Ring Fit Adventure did. The balance board is out. The Ring Con is in. Ring Fit Adventure ended up being one of the best-selling games on the system. It does look pretty fun, and I heard it really got your heart pumping, but I seriously don't understand fitness video games. There's so many of them, but I've never heard of one single person ever getting any physical benefits out of being a dedicated fitness gamer. I guess everyone wants to get fit, and if Nintendo can appeal to that desire while making it fun instead of work, that's enough to get millions on board. But the most a game like this can do is help you with cardio and flexibility, right? That's the sort of thing you can get with any at-home workout routine. I'm obviously no fitness expert, but I'd love to talk to one about what exactly these games do for us aside from giving us an excuse to move our bodies. Which might be the only thing it needs to do. Maybe I'm thinking about it too hard. Maybe it is primarily a video game meant to take you on a little RPG adventure that happens to have workout-based control schemes and combat systems. Just another classic Nintendo gimmick. I think if they went harder on that video game part of it, I would seriously be tempted to try it out, just for the novelty. But this game seemed like it didn't have much to do outside of a fairly short main quest where you defeat a roided out dragon. Judging by how well it sold, I'm sure we'll be seeing some kind of sequel on the Switch too. Nintendo currently holds Ring Fit Adventure as one of its big IPs. Of the select franchises available on Nintendo Alarmo, one of them is Ring Fit Adventure, alongside Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, and Pikmin. That is really funny to me. I'm very curious to see what comes next, and more importantly, what peripheral comes next. Luigi's Mansion 3 was a very nice surprise. We didn't know if this was going to go on to be a franchise. The second one came out so long after and kinda had mixed reception. But the third game had the perfect hook going for it. It's Luigi's Hotel. The biggest criticism of Dark Moon, aka Luigi's Mansion 2, was its mission-based structure, robbing you of feeling like you were exploring one big mansion like in the first game. In 3, they were able to have the level variety of Dark Moon, while not disrupting the cohesion of the overall building by separating areas by floors and occasionally having you backtrack so it all feels intentional and organic. The animation in cutscenes and gameplay might be the best Nintendo had to offer for the entire system. And there was an online mode too that was kind of fun for a little bit. They added more stuff for free later down the line, but I never got to it because yeah, I didn't want to pay for Switch Online. The single-player game on its own was a joy though, more than worth it. My only complaint is that I still don't think 2 or 3 ever match up to the vibe of the original. Most of the ghosts in this are still that generic basic green ghost with the happy face. The character designs in Luigi's Mansion on GameCube were so much more silly and lively. It was also much darker and spookier. Not like it was actually going for scares, but the whole Haunted Mansion atmosphere is not quite present in the sequels. As good as 3 is, it still opts for a more cute atmosphere, and that makes it less interesting. Come on, Nintendo, not every game needs to be cute. Oh, but it did have Gooigi, so that's scoring it some major points. This was a big one. First home console mainline HD Pokémon game. Exciting stuff. Pokémon Sword made me quit the franchise. Full stop. I'm gonna try to make this as brief as I can. When Pokémon made the jump to 3D with X and Y, it was another exciting time for the series. But when that initial excitement wore off, it felt like so much charm was lost in that transition. One of my personal favorite parts of a new game was seeing the new sprite work and poses for all the new and old Pokémon. With Black and White, they even added animations to them. But in X and Y, every single Pokémon was just a default stance 3D model. Then we got Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, remakes of my first generation Pokémon. I was so ready for the nostalgia rush of those games, but somehow the magic felt lost a little bit. Then we got Sun and Moon, which did include a number of big change-ups for the series, but it also, once again, just copy and pasted the same models over. The cutting of corners was getting increasingly noticeable. Now we make this big jump to Sword and Shield, which ended up being the prime example of a corner cut game. Battles just get dumber with each passing generation. I feel like I don't even need a brain to beat these games. And they won't bother adding any difficulty options for longtime fans. The story is barely even there. The same models are copy-pasted again, just upscaled to HD, at least for the ones they bothered to bring over, because for the first time ever, they broke tradition and stopped letting you use any Pokemon you wanted from the past. There weren't even gyms in this one. They couldn't even make gyms. Instead, you just go right into the quote-unquote gym leader and fight them in a copy-pasted stadium the exact same way as the rest of them. There's not a single town that stands out. And yeah, the story, was there even a story? Did anything happen? Like, I hadn't felt so insulted for buying a game in years. Pokemon Sword and Shield can't hide the fact that it was rushed out the door as quickly as possible. I mean, just look at these covers of these games, man. They didn't even make a unique legendary cover guide. It's just a big wolf with a blue sword or a big wolf with a red shield. Yeah, that's good enough. Ship it. They'll still buy it. And I did. So from then on, I stopped playing Pokemon. It just wasn't for me anymore. I was already getting bored of this formula that went on unchanged for decades, and it culminated in this slop of a game. And then they charged more for a DLC expansion. Yeah, that's gonna be a no from me. Next game. Oh, I forgot about this one. Dr. Kawashima's brain training for Nintendo Switch. They tried to bring Brain Age back, and it didn't really work. One of the lowest selling games on the system. It's just math. And other brain teasers. I don't know what made Brain Age sell so well on DS. I guess moms around that era thought they could trick their kids into studying by getting them a studying video game, but whatever was in the air back then is no longer. Sorry, Dr. Kawashima. 2020 starting off with a bang. This is another pass for me. I'm not sure what this game's about. It's like Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem crossover, but they dance. But I'm glad Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE wasn't lost to the Wii U. This Encore version adds a bunch of new story, characters, and stuff like that. Seems to be about what you'd expect from a Persona 4 Golden or Persona 5 Royal. I'm sure some people really loved it. I played Blue Rescue Team back in the day on DS. I always thought it was cool that the blue version was looking down the pit and the red version was the pit, with characters looking above from their primitive Game Boy Advance cartridge. I guess Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX combines the exclusive features of both? Outside of Pokemon differences, I don't know what else separated blue and red. The original was my first exposure to a Mystery Dungeon game, and while I enjoyed the pretty weird story, I did not so much love the gameplay. I never actually beat it, so maybe this was an opportunity to try again, but me and Pokemon were not on speaking terms at this moment. The video game that defined the year of 2020, Animal Crossing: New Horizons. My relationship with Animal Crossing consists of getting sick of the last game and just stopping. Then around 5 or 6 years later, I get really hungry for a new one. Then a new one comes out, and I get sick of it after a few weeks. At the end of the day, Animal Crossing is about vibing. It's not about doing much outside of enjoying your little house in your little town with your little friends. But I'm a very objective-based gamer. I gotta work towards something. I at least gotta see a bar fill up, you know? I really love the real-time event calendar and finding random occurrences around town, but once I pay off my debt, I just drop off hard. I played every previous entry though, so I would say I'm well versed enough to talk about this series. For me, New Horizons didn't quite give me everything I wanted from a next-generation Animal Crossing. I want to see more ways to interact with neighbors, more activities to do in town, more things to work towards besides saving up money to pay off your house. The Nook Miles program was a step in the right direction there, but it just didn't have any rewards that were super fulfilling. What New Horizons instead focused on was more customizability. Compared to previous games, there was so much more you can do. Now it wasn't just your house you could decorate, you could terraform your whole island to make it truly yours. And you can craft stuff to help you do it. This direction probably appeals more to what the target demographic wants out of this franchise, so maybe I'm just not them. Like, they released a DLC that was entirely focused on designing homes, and I just had no interest in that, so that probably confirms my theory. I don't know though, once the pandemic was over and people moved on from New Horizons, I've been seeing it get a lot more criticism, and it's been over 5 years. I honestly haven't started feeling hungry for a new one. I might skip it next time depending on where they go with it. Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics. Nintendo literally put a bunch of super old board games into a package. Sure, if you're into that, I guess. So, 2020 was when I went through a big RPG resurgence. Animal Crossing wasn't my pandemic game as much as Final Fantasy VII Remake, Persona 5 Royal, and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. After hearing about Xenoblade and its sequel being the premier Nintendo JRPG for so long, I had to give this definitive version a go. It was a really nice story and I loved the characters. Wasn't crazy about the gameplay. I hope this isn't too hot of a take. I hope we don't have another Final Fantasy Tactics situation on our hands, but the gameplay in Xenoblade 1 was just kinda dull. The idea of position and movement playing a factor is great, but I never felt like it mattered enough to keep me engaged. Most battles against normal enemies consist of me dancing around them trying to get a critical backslash in. It really didn't help that I had just played Final Fantasy VII Remake, which was like the perfect real-time action combat system, and Xenoblade is a remastered Wii game that couldn't live up to it. I liked exploring the world and discovering weird creatures and stuff. I pretty much liked everything but the combat, but that is the most important part for me. And it made the game feel a little bit like a slog. So I never got around to Xenoblade 2. I don't know if I ever will because the story and characters seem less appealing to me there. Future Connected, the added-on story exclusive to this version, was a lovely little addition. I don't know if I'm missing some context, since this is made in a post-sequel world, but I took it as two characters reflecting on their journey and their future in a relatable way. Let me know if I should keep going through Xenoblade or not. And I mean like if I'd like it, not because you just want me to. Because I'm considering it. Paper Mario the Origami King exists in a spot between accepted by fans and still not good enough. After Sticker Star was seen as a disaster and Color Splash still not great, everyone was really hoping Paper Mario would go back to its roots, just like Mario Party finally did. Not quite. Origami King once again has this unique anti-RPG combat system. But you know, at least it's a system. There was no structure to anything in the last two games. At least now there's a clear goal for what you're supposed to do in a battle, and you don't need to collect consumable moves to spend every time. It is kind of fun, yet it doesn't stand in for an actual combat system. It's more puzzly than strategy. That's okay if that's what you want to do, but it's pretty difficult to keep that interesting across so many battles. The boss fights are fun, but I don't know about the normal battles. Story-wise, it's a step in the right direction. It definitely has its fun and charming moments. Everyone always mentions the Babam story arc. I was pretty thoroughly entertained the whole way through. It's a solid game. We've been on an upward trajectory since Sticker Star, yet we've still not reached the heights of Paper Mario on N64 and the Thousand Year Door. This style of Paper Mario still has not come up with a solution to one of its biggest problems: giving battles purpose. With no experience or RPG elements, battles give you coins and occasionally like a mushroom, basically nothing of value. There's no benefit to ever battling anything, and the game just chokes you into spots where you don't have a choice but to battle just to get through. Why is Paper Mario so scared of being an RPG? It's like they're working harder to avoid it than they would if they just threw in a leveling system, just keep it basic. The series still has much to do, but this was a fun game, and I'm still in for whatever comes next. Remember how mad people got at Super Mario 3D All-Stars? It wasn't entirely unjustified, but after all the talk of this being a limited time release, it was on store shelves for years to come. Although 5 years later, I think it actually is kind of hard to find now. They were also mad at the fact that these were cheap emulations packed into a $60 collection that didn't even include Galaxy 2. That part I am still mad about. Super Mario Galaxy 2 was last seen on the Wii U eShop 10 years ago. When is that gonna come back? Well, even if I thought it was overpriced, I can't resist the opportunity to play these games again. I once again 100% completed all 3 and had a great time. 3D All-Stars controversy aside, these are still some of the greatest platformers ever made. Surprisingly, after this playthrough, I ended up feeling that the most poorly aged was Galaxy. Sunshine and 64 still have great snappy freedom of movement, and when played back to back with Galaxy, it's a pretty jarring difference. Galaxy is so much slower and floatier with not nearly as many moves at your disposal. Plus its lack of an in-depth hub world hurts a lot, see the Odyssey review from earlier. And for true completion, you actually have to 100% the game twice, once as Luigi. That was just unnecessary. Anyway, Mario Sunshine is the best one, haters stay mad. The failure of Labo couldn't stop Nintendo from making their tinkery toy games. Mario Kart Live Home Circuit is another really fun idea I can get behind. It just wasn't something I was about to buy. Another perfect gift for kids. Setting up a little RC cart, creating your own course in your actual house, and being able to drive it around through the camera view sounds like a Christmas morning memory waiting to happen. It didn't look like there was any actual depth to the game itself though. Like Labo, the fun was setting it all up and seeing it work. It wasn't something you were gonna play too many times. But either way, you get an RC cart out of it, so that's neat. Cashing in my Wii U card again and skipping this one, though it tempted me more than any other port. My biggest complaint about Pikmin 3 was it was too easy. Pikmin 3 Deluxe adds a hard mode. It also added new story stuff and challenges. Compared to most of the Deluxe ports, it had quite a lot of new stuff. But ultimately, I just didn't pull the trigger. Pikmin 3 was fun though, I'd play it again someday. Another Kirby game to my pile. Kirby Fighters 2 was an unexpected sequel to a very small 3DS eShop game. It's basically a Smash Bros. Style fighting game with Kirby copy abilities. It had a notable difference in production value compared to its predecessor, but not a whole lot more depth. There's a story mode now, but you can beat it in one sitting, even if you do it as like every character, it's not gonna take you long. It can get a lot more difficult than I was anticipating though, and it's got online multiplayer. I don't know who the heck is still playing, but it's nice to have the option. Move that over to make room for another HAL Laboratory eShop game. Part-Time UFO is a wonderfully charming puzzle game. It's even better than Box Boy, and I encourage everyone to check it out. It actually started as a mobile game, but don't worry, it's a good one. You're basically a flying claw machine that keeps getting hired for various part-time jobs that have you moving and carefully placing stuff, often balancing a Jenga-like tower of various objects. It gets pretty tense when trying to fulfill challenge conditions for each level, and there's co-op. What more could you want? I've ranted a lot on this channel about Koei Tecmo and the Dynasty Warriors games. I've grown to hate them a little bit by now, yet Age of Calamity got me. They got me by promising a real story following the actual characters from Breath of the Wild. Even though it's all technically not canon, it still got me excited enough to play another Warriors game. The gameplay is an upgrade from before. There's slightly more of an adventure element to it rather than just button mashing nonsense, though it's still mostly button mashing nonsense. The level select screen being the map styled exactly like it is in Breath of the Wild was really cool. I'll give them that. They know how to fan service. The story was mildly interesting, but it didn't take long for me to get bored of playing the same maps over and over while mashing the same combo over and over. I ultimately regretted my purchase and really need to just stop giving these Warriors games a chance. They're not for me. Nintendo still loves them though, apparently, because they continue to crank them out. I swear if they end up doing a Kirby Warriors or something, I'm in big trouble. Fitness Boxing 2? You're not Ring Fit trainee. And the last game of 2020 ends with a bit of a sad note. Jump Rope Challenge was a free, extremely basic game that Nintendo developers made while trapped at home, for others trapped at home, so they could still exercise a bit during the isolation of the global pandemic. I tried it out just for the heck of it. You really do just jump for as long as you can. It was meant to be a limited release, but when the player base reached 2.5 billion jumps, they decided to keep the game going. Nintendo really cares about your exercise. Super Mario 3D World is great. Unfortunately, 100% completing it requires you to basically play it 5 times over, once with each character. So even though it was 8 years old at this point, and they added a new dive to make mobility even more fun, I still didn't want to buy it again, but I knew I had to play Bowser's Fury one way or another. So I got a free trial of GameFly and rented it from there. 100%ed Bowser's Fury and then gave it back. I can safely say it's my favorite expansion of the generation. As small as it was, it kind of felt like another step forward for the series, a different step than the one Odyssey took. A taste of what a truly seamless open world 3D Mario might look like. If we're not going to get a traditional Mario 64/Sunshine style game, then this is what I want to see next. Since the announcement of Donkey Kong Bonanza, we have no idea what's up with the next 3D Mario. Bonanza looks almost certainly a product of the Mario Odyssey dev team. So have they been working on that this whole time instead of Mario? Is the 3D World plus Bowser's Fury team a different team? Maybe they're working on the next Mario? I really don't know. That new DK game is hype, but I really hope a new Mario isn't still like 5 years away. This felt like it was the #1 Wii U game request. Fans spent a generation asking for it, and then it came out on Switch, where it couldn't utilize the gamepad as a camera while something else was going on the other screen. Such a shame. New Pokemon Snap seemed kinda fun, but not that fun. Which is exactly how I would describe the original Pokemon Snap. I mean, you just take pictures of Pokemon. The begging for this game felt 100% nostalgia fueled, and when it finally happened, I didn't really hear a lot of praise for it. It's Pokemon Snap. You take pictures of Pokemon. We got 2 remakes of the original entries from a forgotten Famicom franchise. Famicom Detective Club The Missing Heir and Famicom Detective Club The Girl Who Stands Behind. They're visual novels. $60. No one played them. Another entry in the Nintendo Tinkerer line. The goal of this game was to make learning game development simple and fun, but it faces the problem that every game creator game has. You can only play them and show them to other people who have the game. What a lot of people don't know about Game Builder Garage is that it's basically a repurposed and enhanced version of something that was already included in the Labo kits. You can make your own games using or not using the Labo stuff with this exact style of menus and node-based code. People cared so little about Labo that no one noticed Nintendo tried to sell the same game twice. Unfortunately, Game Builder Garage sold about as well as Labo, maybe even less. They really tried with this, but it just never worked out. So I said I'm not into Mario sports, but I do enjoy golf video games. Golf, in my opinion, is like the best sport for this medium, so I was actually tempted to get Mario Golf Super Rush, especially when they showed it would have a story mode, single-player campaign with RPG elements, seemingly inspired by the heavily praised Mario Golf on Game Boy Advance. Also, Speed Golf looked pretty fun, admittedly, like it was platforming with golf, kind of a good genre mesh there. But just like Mario Tennis Aces, these intriguing new modes were not as interesting as we imagined they would be when the game finally came out, and people just kinda forgot about it. They said it couldn't be done, but with The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, you could play the game without motion controls. I remember loving Skyward Sword when I first played it. I was really tempted to see how it would even play with buttons. I feel like it would be awkward, but everyone dunks on this game so hard, I wanted to see if they were all right, or if I was just seeing past all the hate. One day I may know for sure, but I just wasn't in the mood to pick this one up at the time. WarioWare Get It Together is the first home console WarioWare game since 2006, because Game & Wario doesn't really count. I was excited for it, but I wasn't super into this game's gimmick. You now played as different characters with unique abilities who interact with the stages in different ways. And that means all the micro games are designed specifically around these abilities. I'd usually be down for a change like this, but after watching some people play it online who were clearly not feeling it, I was turned off. WarioWare really is about the simplest, dumbest 5-second games. Adding this layer of depth just didn't fit it. And then there's the whole pricing situation. Apparently $50 is as low as Nintendo's ever gonna go, even for tiny games like this. Actually, shortly before a Nintendo Direct, they sent surveys out to people, which they do from time to time. I always like to fill them out. But unlike most of their surveys, they got very specific and straight up asked you if you would be willing to pay $50 for a WarioWare game. And I was like, probably not. And then soon later, they revealed a $50 WarioWare game. And I didn't buy it. I actually made a video about this game. It's kinda old now, but I just had to get my feelings out about it at the time. Metroid Dread was an announcement fans have been waiting ages for. I mean, we gave up waiting for it. That's why it was so huge when it happened. We didn't even consider it possible anymore. By now, Prime 4 had already restarted its development, and we all assumed that that was the only Metroid-related thing happening, and it was gonna take like 5 more years. Then they drop Metroid Dread, and we freak out. We go crazy. Metroid 5 is real. But I gotta be honest, when it finally came out, it didn't hit quite as hard as I hoped. I lay it all out in that video, but as a quick summary, I don't like how much more of an action game this series has become. I felt it sacrificed the atmosphere we love so much about Metroid in favor of bigger laser blasts and reflex parrying and whatnot. The Metroidvania was a genre the indie devs have fully taken over, and they have created so many action platformers in the same vein that quite frankly wipe the floor with Metroid Dread. It's not a bad game, but it's not an amazing game either. The graphics are not very stylized. I do miss the sprite work of the past, kind of similar issue to the Pokémon one I was talking about earlier. The soundtrack is completely forgettable, and the main gimmick of these unkillable machines that track you down never lived up to their full potential. You only get stalked in areas the game allows you to be stalked in, and they always let you know when that's about to happen, so there's like not really any tension or suspense. And then of course you do end up killing them. They're basically mini bosses. I don't want to seem too negative on it because I very much enjoyed it, but after like 20 years of hype, it didn't really live up to that. I want to see where we could even go for Metroid 6, but I'd really rather someone other than Mercury Steam make it. No offense to them. I don't know why Nintendo has an in-house team for every franchise except Metroid. Like, what's that about? I'm keeping realistic expectations for Metroid Prime 4. I've kind of deleted it from my mind since that development reset announcement. I'm just trying not to think about it at all until it's in my hands and I'm just playing it. Along with Metroid Dread, we got the third and final iteration of Nintendo Switch 1, the OLED model. This comes after years of Switch Pro rumors. It was getting tiring how often we'd hear about the beefier Pro version that would run some of these games better. I'm thinking the pandemic changed things up, and that model ended as this. There's no Pro stuff here. It runs games the same way, but boy do they look better on this beautiful OLED screen. Even compared to the Steam Deck OLED that came out a few years later, games actually look better on this Switch. Nintendo was working some kind of magic with this one, and I was worried the Switch 2 would suffer from not being an OLED, but they worked some magic with that screen too. I can hardly tell the difference. They fixed that pesky bezel I've been complaining about. They moved the brightness sensor to the top of the system itself so it's not in the way, and oh man, they got that stand. The smoothness of it, the width, the adjustability, it's perfect. And they basically reused it for Switch 2. The dock was much sleeker as well. They took out the cushiony bumpers of the original that were scratching screens, and a little more wiggle room was added so the Switch isn't so clamped in there. I never heard or had any scratch complaints with this dock. The back now fully pops out for even easier access, and you got a LAN cable port now. This may all sound like small stuff. Yeah, it's all small stuff, pretty much. I maintain the theory that this was planned to be a bigger upgrade at some point, but for those who just love getting shiny new screens to play games on, this is one shiny screen. I got mine like a year and a half later when the Tears of the Kingdom edition came out, so I only had about 2 years of use before it was fully replaced by the Switch 2. I knew what I was getting into though. I just like collecting all the Nintendo gadgets I can. I was mostly using the Switch Lite at that point, so it felt like an even bigger upgrade, except for that D-pad. Oh man, I miss that D-pad. Even the price at the time, $350, it was questionable. I was hoping the Switch 1 would get a price drop and this would be the new $300 model, but no. Nintendo knows they're on the top and they're not gonna skimp on prices. But with just a $50 difference between these two SKUs, if you can swing it, the OLED is absolutely worth it. I don't know why you wouldn't just get that if you were looking to buy a Switch for the first time. At this point in my life, I'm not really bringing video game consoles to any functions to play party games. I've fully moved on to board games for that purpose, so I can no longer justify buying new Mario parties, even though I love this series. After all these years, Mario Party Superstars doesn't just bring back the classic style gameplay we've been missing, it's a celebration of fan favorite boards and minigames from Mario Party's past. Not only that, but we finally got online multiplayer. It seemed like exactly what we've been waiting for, but I just had to watch all the fun from the sidelines. I do think it could have used a few more boards, only featuring 5 total from the original trilogy, but Mario Party Superstars still did a great job at satisfying longtime fans. And alongside Mario Party Superstars was the beginning of Nintendo Switch Online plus Expansion Pack. As I said before, the $20 a year price tag was quite reasonable, and they continued to add features to it such as Nintendo Music and Game Chat. We were all afraid of a price hike, but instead, they decided to add a premium tier. This expansion pack premiered with the long-awaited start of the Nintendo 64 Classics collection, and went on to include Game Boy Advance, Sega Genesis, and, exclusively for Switch 2, GameCube. And this tier is going to cost you $50 a year. That's a pretty big jump. But I will highlight a part that I find particularly interesting. Certain DLC expansions for select games are just included in this membership. That's a really cool idea. With Expansion Pass, you didn't have to buy the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass, New Horizons Happy Home DLC, or the Splatoon 2 Octo expansion. And if you were debating getting the upgrade pack for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 edition, those are also included. I want to know if any future Switch 2 editions are going to be included, because that's going to add a lot of value to this service in the early years of the new system. Still, unless you're going to be all over the N64 and GameCube libraries, I wouldn't say there's a great reason for paying more than double what the basic membership costs. And I always say, online multiplayer should be free anyway. As this generation rolls on, I wonder how far they'll go with implementing more old consoles. Expansion Pack started as a cheeky reference to the N64, but now it's got GameCube. Is it gonna have Wii, too? Are we gonna get Dreamcast? That'll be cool. Will they make it to 3DS? And if they get as far as they're willing to go, what kind of new features are subscribers gonna expect? It'll probably be time for Switch 3 when we start getting answers to that, but the future of this expansion pack is interesting. Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire was my OG generation, but I still had a ton of nostalgia for Gen 4. So I was tempted again when Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were revealed, except they didn't look impressive at all. Usually, Pokémon remakes try to catch up the older generations and modernize them along with whatever the current generation is. With its newest quality of life improvements, any features that were exclusive to the sequel game such as Emerald, or in this case, Platinum, and most importantly of all the Pokémon that came out after the original. This time, they didn't do any of that. They didn't even bring it up to the graphics standards of Sword and Shield. It looks and behaves exactly the same as it did on DS, with character models still squashed down to fit on a square grid. But instead of that being part of the charm thanks to 2D sprites and animation, it just looks ugly with 3D HD models. You'll find none of the post-2007 Pokemon in the Pokédex, and probably most insulting, none of the new features in Pokemon Platinum from 2008. Game Freak didn't even make this. It was offhanded to another company to fart it out as fast as possible. None of these features were in because they wanted to, quote, maintain the identity of the original. Except for all the new glitches everyone found that weren't in the original, I guess. The cash grabbing of this franchise is just getting more and more blatant, and my respect for it continues to plummet. Oh gosh, Nintendo will stop at nothing to improve your physical and mental health. Big Brain Academy Brain vs. Brain is the first multiplayer-focused game in the series, and I'm not sure multiplayer is a great angle for a game about repeating exercises to improve your IQ or whatever. Like, who am I gonna find to play this with me every day? I could try online, but that will almost certainly be dead within months. Both Big Brain and Brain Age had tremendous success on their original platforms, but unlike most of the comebacks on Switch, neither of these hit. Kids just don't want to learn anymore. They just want Fortnite and Splatoon. Society. So at this point, the Pokemon franchise is nearly irredeemable for me. They clearly just don't have respect for their audience because they could deliver hot garbage on a plate and still sell over 10 million copies, and they've basically done that. Pokemon is simply too big to fail. Yet, Pokemon Legends Arceus looked to me like the game I never knew I wanted from them. It looked like it had that generational leap forward that the Switch was known for delivering by now. It was a true open world. It had a brand new battle system. different than the one they've been using since 1996. You controlled the trainer primarily, actively participating in the battles and shouting commands at your Pokemon to attack rather than the static turn-based button commands of old. Battles in these games have gotten so boring over the years. As you grow older, you realize how basic these games are as RPGs. There's a competitive scene, so it's weird that the main games never try to appeal to more experienced players at all. I never got into competitive Pokemon, I was just looking for a more engaging experience across the story mode. In my last few Pokemon games, I made my own enjoyment out of catching them all. When I first completed the National Dex, I went the next step forward and did one of those living dexes. That's catching and actually keeping one version of every single Pokemon in existence and storing them in one game. I even had duplicates for alternate forms, even that butterfly one that had like 20, that was ridiculous. I just love collecting stuff, so when they said that the main goal in Pokemon Legends Arceus was to complete the National Dex, and the whole world was built around the player hunting them down or otherwise discovering all these creatures rather than the basic go to the 8 gyms and beat everyone formula, the same thing they've been doing since 1996, I was genuinely excited about this series again. And so soon after the embarrassing Diamond and Pearl remakes. When the game came out, it wasn't a disaster, it wasn't broken, the graphics were good, and the reviews were all positive. Even the most cynical Pokemon critics were happy with it, but I still didn't get it. I don't know, maybe I'm just not over everything else they've screwed up. Me and Pokemon just need to spend a little more time apart. I figured maybe I'll get the next Legends installment, but I'm not a fan of the environment they've chosen for Legends Z to A. It takes place entirely within a claustrophobic city. If they do a Gen 3 focused one, maybe that'll be enough for me. We just needed to wait one game and a couple spin-offs before we got the Kirby of our dreams. Kirby in the Forgotten Land, after 30 years, delivers the first mainline 3D platforming experience. I made the ranking every Kirby game video in preparation for this occasion, and then I gave Forgotten Land its own big review video when it came out. Probably a lot less people care, but I'm just as committed to reviewing every future Kirby game as I am to reviewing every future Final Fantasy game. Expect a review for the Star-Crossed World expansion later this year. If you want my extended thoughts on Kirby and the Forgotten Land, you can check out the video. In a nutshell, I loved it. The levels were charming and imaginative. It was super fun to collect everything. There was a little town to hang out in with like a Waddle Dee band, and there were some good mini games. We got a challenging post-game, complete with eldritch horrors to top it off. Everything a Kirby game needs. Seeing how they translated the movesets of these copy abilities was a real treat, though sacrifices clearly had to be made to make that work, and I hope we don't have to make them again next time. And also, some abilities are translated much better than others. It is still extremely late to the party. Mario and Zelda have been 3D for so long that they've jumped further into open world games this generation. Kirby and the Forgotten Land makes me wonder how this series would do that. My big hope for the next mainline is that it ditches the stage-based structure and really tries to change up the formula the way its Nintendo brethren are doing. But I'll probably be happy with anything. We already have Sakurai back making an Air Ride sequel. It would just be greedy to ask for more. I was foolishly skeptical of Nintendo Switch Sports. Everyone likes to flaunt that Wii Sports was one of the best-selling video games ever, but it was bundled with the system. And the Wii was the era of casual gamers being amazed that you could swing a stick to hit a tennis ball. How are you just gonna repackage that idea and sell it again in the year 2022 and expect it to be as successful? Oh, it's the number 11 best-selling Switch game of all time. I stand corrected. So is this just for the casuals again? Is this for that crowd that only owns Mario Kart? It must be. People will just never get tired of swinging that stick around to pretend to play tennis. Maybe that is just peak gaming. Nintendo Switch Sports didn't even get great reviews at the time. There wasn't a lot of content and they took an extra year just to add golf to it. And what was the deal with sidelining the Miis like that? Who are these uncanny almost Miis that were only used in this game? Miis are a recognizable brand icon, and you were clearly marketing to the people with nostalgia for the Mii era. At least you can still play as a Mii, but that almost makes it weirder. Like if these guys aren't replacements, then what the heck are they? Anyway, they got volleyball in it, let's move on. This is the end of the Mario Sports Switch trilogy. This one was once again received poorly for the same reason as Mario Tennis Aces and Mario Golf Super Rush. But it stung extra hard because this wasn't just Mario Soccer, this was Mario Strikers. One of those smash hit GameCube and Wii games that so many people have a ton of nostalgia for, but never expected to come back because it just had too much attitude, like literally. Nintendo steered Mario far away from that punk rock aesthetic. We didn't even think a new Strikers game would be allowed anymore, but here it is. People were going nuts for this game. And just like Aces and Super Rush, it comes out and turns out to be mid. Mario Strikers Battle League didn't actually have nearly as much attitude as the first two games, nor as much content, nor fun factor. The maps all look basically the same. The abilities didn't have the flash and expression they did before, and basically all you did was play soccer. I mean, I don't know what you really expected. I never played any of these games, so I'm not exactly sure how they differ content-wise, but I know the visual aesthetic was one of the main draws due to how jarring a difference it is to everything else Mario. And you can see just from watching footage how this one dropped the ball. Hey guys, when they inevitably announce Mario Baseball for Switch 2 and it looks like it's gonna be just like your childhood classic, I have crazy news for you. It's just gonna be Mario throwing a baseball around with barely anything more to do. 3 times this has happened now, don't fall for it again. Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. They made another Fire Emblem Warriors. Enough is enough. So I gave my whole story with Xenoblade already, but I will say Xenoblade Chronicles 3 looked way more interesting than Xenoblade Chronicles 2. All that weird anime stuff was dropped. Well, not all of it. I mean, it looked much more like the first one did. But I sure as hell ain't skipping 2 to get to 3. It's all or nothing with me. I was glad to see this game get universal praise from critics and fans alike. We can safely say Xenoblade is here to stay. It's so crazy to think about how that first game on the Wii was basically destined to fade into obscurity, and it defied that destiny. Monolith Soft has also become one of Nintendo's closest allies, and they have some insane talent over there, getting this game out so soon after the Torna expansion, while also helping with the development of multiple other Nintendo games. Remember when they announced that this game would come out 2 months earlier than they said it would? Because they just finished it fast? Those guys are nuts over there. The Kirby ball keeps rolling along in Kirby's Dream Buffet. This is much more what I'm looking for in a Kirby eShop spinoff. For someone who doesn't like online multiplayer much, I'd follow Kirby anywhere. I got pretty deep into the meta of this racing game. You could watch my 47-minute video going into the detail about how to win at this game. Of course, it'll do you no good anymore, as I'm sure the online multiplayer is completely dead. Luckily, I 100%ed this Kirby game before that happened. But for real, I love when we get little $20 games like this. It's just a racing game with a small handful of stages that have you rolling down cakes and other tasty foods to try and grow as fat as possible. Then you face off in a battle to eat even more while pushing the others off the platforms. I spent about 23 hours reaching max level 135 and collecting every character cookie prize to receive the final award. And I had a nice time, even though it was a bit of a grind. I unfortunately can't recommend it thanks to the likely lack of available online matches, but it sure was fun while it lasted. Another unexpected threequel out so soon after the last one. I guess 5 years is enough, but Splatoon 2 was so heavily supported for so long that it was kind of surprising to see Splatoon 3 already. As an outsider, I couldn't tell you what the big difference is here besides, once again, more weapons, a bigger campaign, a new desert hub area, and new pop idols to host your daily update show. Oh, and they have 3-way turf wars now. I wonder if that was good, because it sounded a little chaotic. From what I understand, the story mode kicked up the lore a bunch this time, which I'm a big fan of, and the side order DLC was really weird and different. As we know now, the final Splatfest of Splatoon 1 determined the direction of Splatoon 2, and that trend continued to 3, whose final Splatfest was past versus present versus future, and the winner was past. So maybe Splatoon 4 will take place in the past. I don't know. Splatfests were always the coolest parts of these games, these little festivals players can look forward to for years after the game came out. And this big finale that has actual stakes for the whole franchise. The fact that players technically have a say in the direction the series goes by participating in the active game is extremely underappreciated for this series. It's something you can only do in a live service game. I do want to get more into Splatoon, but I'm just not a competitive online multiplayer guy. Well, they just announced what looks like a single player spin-off, Splatoon Raiders. Maybe that's exactly what I'm looking for. The first Mario and Rabbids was one of my biggest surprises, and I was hyped for the sequel. Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope improves on the first game in just about every single aspect. It made the battles in the original seem basic. You were no longer locked to a grid, you had free movement within your walking range. Every character was reworked into much more specialized roles. The environments were bigger, more interesting, and had their own fun little stories. Grant Kirkhope returned for the music, along with Yoko Shimomura. If you thought the music couldn't get better, this is one of the best Mario RPGs of all time. And definitely one of my favorite strategy RPGs ever. There's a good challenge to it if you kick the difficulty up to hard mode, and I was actively using the whole roster of characters depending on how I wanted to approach every fight. Rip playable Yoshi, but we got playable Bowser, so it's a worthy sacrifice for me. And in the DLC, we finally got to see Rayman again after his spotlight was stolen by these annoying mascot characters. The Rabbids remain the worst part of the game, but everything around them was so fantastic that this time their presence didn't even bother me at all. That initial shock of them being there was left in the first game. Now I'm just used to it. I even found myself laughing at a couple of the jokes. It's crazy how much love and care was put into these two Ubisoft games, a company who is at the forefront of mediocrity. And the sad ending to this story is Sparks of Hope underperformed and the lead creative director left the company right around the time Ubisoft laid off a bunch of its employees. He's now formed a new studio called Day for Night that is, quote, allowing them to create something they couldn't find at Ubisoft. I am really wondering what that means, and I will be watching very closely. Bayonetta has a very strange development history. She's an iconic video game character everyone seems to know, but her games have never been that popular. The original was a cult classic, but it was basically left to stay that way and never got a sequel, that is, until Nintendo, of all companies, helped pick it up for the Wii U exclusive Bayonetta 2, which kept it cult classic because it was on Wii U, until finally trying to break into mainstream with the Switch exclusive Bayonetta 3. But it didn't work. They hyped this game up for years, and it still didn't seem to break away from its cult fanbase. It still sold quite poorly. Well, as someone who's never played any of these games, I can kinda tell you why from my perspective. Bayonetta never looked that fun. It has the trademark giant Platinum Games bosses and darker M-rated world and tone, a welcome change of pace in the Nintendo family, but I watched these gameplay clips and absolutely nothing grabs me. When it became a pseudo-Nintendo franchise, I was tempted to try it out, especially when Bayonetta 2 was ported to Switch with Bayonetta 1 packed in to get you all caught up, but nothing could quite get me to pull the trigger. It might be the graphical style and fast action button mash gameplay. It all looks like something that should be on the PS5, but they're settling for the lower resolution and performance of the Switch. It looks like all those other third-party ports that are significant downgrades from their PS5 counterparts, except for Bayonetta, that's the only option you have. Maybe Bayonetta just doesn't fit with the rest of the Nintendo IPs. I heard from fans that this was a good game. Glad they got something they wanted, but the question is now, will they keep trying with Bayonetta, or are they just gonna lay the witch to rest? Another Pokemon generation already. I want to paint a simple picture for you. In 2017, we got Splatoon 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle. 5 years later, in 2022, we got Splatoon 3, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. Each of these were huge sequels that satisfied the heck out of their fans. The last mainline Pokemon game was not in 2017, it was in late 2019. Impressive that they were able to pull off the same level of quality sequel in just 3 years, while also getting Legends Arceus out like 10 months earlier. I mean, that had to be mostly a different team, right? But no, of course they didn't pull off the same level of quality. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was another unpolished, stuttering, crashing bug fest, because when it comes to this franchise, they just don't care about finishing their games. This wasn't news to anyone by now. After seeing the reviews, I saw most of the same sentiment towards this gen. Most of them said, the game is unfinished, but it's still the most fun I've had with Pokemon in years. Aside from the broken stuff, Scarlet and Violet looks like the game I thought Sword and Shield would be. They actually advanced the stagnant formula, taking a few pages out of Legends Arceus' book and bringing a truly open world to the mainline saga, as well as little details that are big deals to longtime fans, such as actually throwing your Pokeball to initiate a battle and then fighting without cutting away to a battle screen. It's like I picked the worst possible game to end on and missed out on the much better games that followed, but I once again avoided this release, partially because of all the problems I was hearing about, but also because I don't think they can win me back with that same old battle system and basic storyline. I've just had enough of it. Legends Arceus was a much more tempting buy for me. For now, I'm remaining on the sidelines and we'll see how Legend Zeta A goes, as well as the inevitable 10th generation on Switch 2. Maybe they are slowly turning themselves around. We got the toothpaste protagonist for this one. You already know I'm not a Fire Emblem guy, but to go back to my Three Houses discussion, I remember that game being huge, and then I kinda stopped hearing about Fire Emblem for the rest of this generation. Maybe it's just my point of view, but when Fire Emblem Engage dropped, there was not a peep about it. It sold quite well, apparently, but the story was heavily criticized and the character design was just stupid. They also did the summon heroes from older games thing, which even from an outsider's perspective, I knew was a gimmick they've done in this series already. Ultimately, perception was mixed among fans. Three Houses was much more universally acclaimed. Are you a Fire Emblem fan? Did you love this one? Let me know, I guess, because I just am uninformed on this series. There's no doubt they're working on more, so we'll see what comes next on the Switch 2. I've been skipping over ports unless they've added new things to them, but really quickly, I want to touch on how everyone agreed Metroid Prime Remastered is the most graphically impressive game on the system. Some even argued that it should be called a remake, and they charged $40 for it. That's the cheapest Nintendo game of the generation. Anyway, Metroid Prime is an all-time classic, and you should absolutely pick it up if you've never played it. Once this happened, every Nintendo Direct speculator made bets on when Prime 2 Remastered was going to drop, assuming they would do the full trilogy before Prime 4. Nope, that just never happened, and we're rapidly approaching the release now, so I guess you're gonna be in the dark on what happened between those two games. That's a classic Nintendo moment. I waited for a sale for this one, but I couldn't pass it up fully when they promised new lore. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is a remake of the beloved Wii classic, featuring a brand new mode with some slight RPG mechanics where you play as Magolor. You know, Magolor! And they threw in an amusement park full of party games to play as well. This is a fun set of mini-games that's pretty fun to play with friends, definitely better than the ones we got in Star Allies. Return to Dreamland isn't my most favorite game in the series, but I'd take any excuse to go through a Kirby game with a fresh coat of paint. They gave this one a new graphical style with these thick borders around everyone. I'm not against it. I still don't know how I feel about DDD's new face though. I think I need a couple more games to get used to it. I wonder if Sakurai's gonna keep that look for Air Riders. They added two new abilities, Giant Laser Shooting Mech and Sand. One was a little more interesting than the other. I was surprised to find a mini campaign attached to the amusement park bit. There's a bunch of achievements to unlock for beating the games on the hardest difficulty as well as completing challenges within them. Love that sort of thing, and to keep up my completed every Kirby game reputation, I had to get them all. I didn't update my ranking list after this one came out, but Return to Dreamland might have jumped up a bit thanks to all this new stuff. I was thinking about giving this game a quick review video, but Refoid was extremely busy at that point and I couldn't find the time. Eventually, I'll update the list. Oh yeah, I completely forgot about this one. If you thought Bayonetta 3 didn't sell well enough, make way for Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon. So I just went over how this franchise didn't seem to fit in with Nintendo, then they go ahead and make a much more timid puzzle adventure game with a cute graphical style. I mean, nobody bought it, but I admit it appealed to me more than the other games had. From what I could gather online, if the jarring change in tone didn't bother you, Cereza and the Lost Demon was a wonderful game. Those 5 Bayonetta fans are still eating good out there, man. You love to see it. I never owned any of the Advance Wars games, they weren't my kind of thing, but I was happy to see it come back after so many years. The graphics, specifically the 2D animation of the characters, looks so good, but once again, that $60 price tag was too much for me to justify, even if it is 2 games in one. The big story with this one was about how it got significantly delayed due to the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. the second time in Advance Wars history a game had to be delayed due to a real-world tragedy. But this one was a little weirder because war is basically always happening. When the game finally came out in 2023, said war was still going on. It's still going on today. To question the morals of profiting off of a war game during the start of a war should ultimately make you question the morals of profiting off a war game at all. Maybe they thought this wouldn't last as long as it is and then just said, fine, release it. It's a finished game, we're not gonna not put it out. To me, it's like, you made the product about turning war into a fun strategy game. This is just the kind of baggage that comes with that. Nintendo didn't get any moral points from anyone by delaying it, they just made desperate Advance Wars fans even more desperate. After that series of decisions, I wonder if they're even gonna bother with this series again. Or maybe it'll just take another 15 years. The Switch has less than 2 years left before its replacement arrives, and it's time to bring back Zelda. Breath of the Wild was all hype and amazement leading up to release. All the controversy about it came later, but Tears of the Kingdom was much more divisive now that we knew what this style of Zelda was like. Which side were you on? Do you like new Zelda better than old? Are you okay with another giant game in the exact same style? Fans still argue to this day, but the impressive thing about Tears of the Kingdom is it makes the incredibly ambitious Breath of the Wild look primitive in comparison. The so-called god powers you had, mind-blowing as they were at the time, were nothing compared to what you can do here. If you were clever in Breath of the Wild, you could attach Octorok balloons to a raft and use a Korok leaf to hover into the sky. That was cool. In Tears of the Kingdom, you could just spawn a fully functioning aircraft out of thin air. In Breath of the Wild, you could freeze certain objects in time, but in Tears of the Kingdom, you can send certain objects back in time. This was stuff I've never seen in a game before. Like, you could just jump through ceilings. Any ceiling at all. A handful of the laws of physics mean nothing to you in this game. Sure, you were technically exploring the same map again, but more than enough things were changed. And you had the entire underground depths with the sky islands above. There was so much more to explore. Puzzle solving was more fun and somehow even more experimental with the amount of ways you could manipulate literally any physical object in this world. I don't know how I could ever return to Breath of the Wild after they blew my mind all over again with Tears of the Kingdom. But all those issues I went over before never really went away. Even though Tears of the Kingdom is pretty objectively a more impressive game, the amazement and wonder still wears off more quickly than it did in Breath of the Wild. Because there's all that crazy stuff you can do, but the general gameplay loop is basically the same. At some point, if you've played Breath of the Wild, you basically know how this game is gonna go for the next 100 plus hours. The story is better, but it's delivered in mostly the same way as before, still taking a back seat as a sacrifice for the freedom and exploration elements. I 100% completed Breath of the Wild, yes, even all the Korok seeds, but not this time. I got too tired of it to do that. I explored just about every inch of the map and got all the shrines. That was enough for me. In hindsight, it makes sense they would follow up Breath of the Wild with a bigger, better sequel, but now even Aonuma himself said he doesn't know where they could go from here. They skipped DLC because they put every idea they had into this one. So once again, we're asking, what the heck could a new Zelda look like anymore? Because they could blow our minds all over again and give us a new sandbox open world with game-breaking abilities we never knew were possible, but the amazement is just gonna wear off even sooner. We know your tricks now. The abilities are all different, but the result is the same. And they can't go back to old-style Zelda because it wouldn't be considered innovative enough. It'd be the opposite, really. The Legend of Zelda brand has been completely altered over this generation. Before the Nintendo Switch, the brand Zelda was about the Triforce, finding 8 temples, using the dungeon item to get to the boss, etc. Now the Zelda brand is wide open grassy fields, building contraptions and solving puzzles in a way that would get the developers laughing at you. Do more people know Link now as the blue tunic wearing hero than as the pointy green hat elf boy? He's just not that guy anymore. I'm dying to know what this live action movie is gonna look like. Is it gonna be a Legend of Zelda movie? Or is it gonna be a Breath of the Wild movie? And if the next game announcement is just gonna be the third Breath of the Wild game, I don't know how I'm gonna feel. Again, I like these games, but I also miss what Zelda used to be because they're not a proper replacement for them. They've put themselves in a really difficult spot where they kind of need to reinvent the wheel again to get everyone fully hyped the way they were before 2017. They're surely cooking up a game right now. I can't wait to see what it looks like. Whoa, I'm getting deja vu. You're telling me it took them just as long to make a 1-2 Switch sequel as it did to make a Breath of the Wild sequel? Everybody 1-2 Switch came out of nowhere, dropped on the eShop with no fanfare at all, almost like Nintendo themselves was embarrassed by it. And the price, $30, basically confirmed that. It brought back my feelings of regret for buying 1-2 Switch at launch. Yet I was still tempted again to get this game, just out of morbid curiosity. Just the fact that no one was talking about it intrigued me enough, but unfortunately, I just don't have enough people around me to play a game like this. It actually seemed like everybody 1-2 Switch had more to offer than the original. More games and more player capacity by letting users join in on their phones. Like a Jackbox game? But it was all motion control weirdness. See, doesn't that make you a little curious? Like, what does a Nintendo phone controller game look like? According to the website, a Nintendo account is required for smart device mode, and there are certain games that only work with phones. Imagine sitting in a room with 10 or more people trying to play this and forcing everyone to make a Nintendo account and download their stupid app. Oh boy. And what's up with the horse head guy? He wasn't in the first one. He's named Horace? What is this, man? I'm so tempted to buy it. Like, I just gotta know. The cringe is luring me in. But nay, I won't do it. Perhaps they'll grace us with a 1-2 Switch 2 someday. Hopefully not. By now it felt like they were going down the list of franchises that needed a big comeback, and they finally landed on Pikmin. I don't know if I'd say Pikmin 4 is a huge leap forward for the series, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to be a new Pikmin game. We only get those every decade or so, and it was a really good one. Surprising new elements, satisfying new mechanics, new kinds of environments like the level that's just a house, the nighttime stages with that extra level of intensity and stress. Oachi the dog provides many fun new ways to control and explore. There's so much variety and stuff to complete in this one. I found Pikmin 4 to be way better than 3. It fixed most of my issues with 3, mostly in regards to difficulty. Some of those Dandori challenges were pretty hard, and they were the perfect type of content to continue making as DLC post-release, but it never happened. Now I'm hoping for a Switch 2 edition with a bunch of new stuff to do. This game came with a rebrand for the franchise, a slightly different logo and a slightly different vibe that I find hard to describe. I'm sure Pikmin fans get what I'm talking about. Some of that has to do with the retconning of previous stories. There's basically an entire rewrite of the first game that you can play in this one, which is pretty fun, but I don't like the needless change in the timeline. This is actually an alternate sequel to Pikmin 1 instead of taking place after 3. Or some people say it's actually a sequel to Pikmin 2? The point is they jumbled everything up and now no one knows what's going on, and they had no reason to do that. It's my biggest complaint about the game, which goes to show how great everything else is. We need more Pikmin games. Play Pikmin. Oh god, this one. Who came up with Detective Pikachu? Like, why does this exist? Why are there 2 of these games? Why was there a Hollywood movie based on this? I must confess, I actually played through the first one. It came out in 2018, and the slate of upcoming 3DS games was so dry, it was basically a dead system at this point, and I was just looking for a cheap game to play. Remember when I said I've always wanted to try Professor Layton? I thought maybe this game would be like that. When I tell you Detective Pikachu was one of the most boring games I've ever played in my life. You know, one of the go-to insults for any given Nintendo game is to say, it's for babies. Nintendo games are for babies, and there's a truthful element to that. They're obviously made with children in mind for the most part, but they also have a lot to offer adults who enjoy well-made video games. It's kind of like saying animated movies are for babies. It's just too broad of a statement to be true. That said, Detective Pikachu is made for babies. I could not believe the challenges they tried to pass as puzzles in that game. I swear one of them was having you choose the correct color, and you were in an empty room with one person in it, and you talk to the person and they say the suspect's favorite color was red. And then you choose red and you solve the puzzle. The whole game was 12 hours of that. That and this wisecracking, fully voiced Pikachu who loves coffee. I don't even think an 11-year-old would find Detective Pikachu fun. You can view it more positively if you think of it as an entry-level visual novel with slight interactable elements, but that still doesn't make it sound entertaining at all. I stuck through all the way to the end, which just gave me a cliffhanger for what would become Detective Pikachu Returns. And I wasn't about to do all that again. Reviews for Detective Pikachu Returns echoed everything I said about the first one. I was happy to know that bullet was dodged. I'll never know what happened to Tim's dad, except it's painfully obvious that he's the Pikachu. That was clear from like the first cutscene of the first game. To anyone who's not a Nintendo fan, saying 2D Mario needs a comeback probably sounds really silly. They release 2D Mario games all the time. But Mario Maker is not the same as an official new Nintendo-made Mario adventure. And for multiple console generations, 2D Mario was plagued by mediocrity under the New Super Mario Bros. Label. To fans, this represented classic Mario in the most boring way possible. Those games just went through the motions, same exact level themes, in the same exact order in every game, same Koopaling bosses, maybe adding one new power-up, and they just kept churning them out. That is, until Mario Maker came along. And we all pretty much realized the levels we could make in that engine were about on par with New Super Mario Bros. That's why it was total bait for them to release New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe right before revealing a new Mario Maker sequel. So we all wondered if an actual new 2D Mario would happen anytime soon. And then we got Super Mario Bros. Wonder. That ugly new label was gone. The graphics were overhauled. It was set in a brand new world. The characters were so charmingly animated. There was personality oozing out of every shot. It was beautiful. This game was everything we've been asking for since the Wii era. They seemed to go out of their way to make every level stand out. Being unique, weird, and different was this game's whole mantra. Like they were making up for years of blandness. They added a badge system, letting you equip yourself with new passive abilities, totally unheard of for a Mario game. There's talking flowers, Bowser turned himself into a castle, he's Castle Bowser. And the most unsung feature of this game, in my opinion, perhaps my favorite part of the whole experience, was the online multiplayer. This game has online player interactions straight out of Journey. What made Journey so special was the magic of meeting a stranger and cooperating together to achieve a goal using only the game's limited communication. I had not felt that type of magic again until Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Finding someone who's clearly struggling and trying with all my might to get them to follow me to where the hidden collectible is, or maybe just staying back with them for a quick revive while they try to get over an obstacle, was an experience as hilarious as it was heartwarming. You make these 5-minute friendships with people you'll never interact with again, and it turns a game you'd usually speed through into one you really want to take your time with. Maybe even replay levels that you've already found everything in. I found myself going back to the levels I already fully completed just to see what kind of funny interactions I could have. I have only positive things to say about Super Mario Bros. Wonder. All I could ask for was more levels, I guess. I need a Switch 2 edition or a sequel to this immediately. The comebacks continue with WarioWare Move It, a spiritual successor to WarioWare Smooth Moves back on the Wii. That was maybe my favorite game in the series. I have a lot of childhood nostalgia with it, so I couldn't resist picking up Move It when it was on sale. I didn't pay $50, I'm sticking to my survey answer. Yet I kinda ended up regretting it. I mean, I knew these games had barely any content, but the problems with this one go a little deeper than that. The original Wii Remote's motion controls are fairly primitive. Smooth Moves made use of just about everything it could do with the pre-Motion Plus controller. But the weirdest thing about WarioWare Move It was the Joy-Cons. It's like they're too advanced for this. On the Wii, you were asked to swat a fly or something, and all you had to do was swing that thing. It barely mattered which direction you swung it. But these Joy-Cons are so sensitive that you won't be able to swing like you want to without going way too hard. You have to play the whole game with subtle, smaller moves, and that's no fun. There were so many micro games lost because I just moved a little too fast for the game and it instantly failed me. I never expected to get so frustrated playing a WarioWare game. I played the multiplayer in a group setting exactly once with non-gamers, people who I played WarioWare Smooth Moves with back in the day. They couldn't understand why they were losing so bad. I kept trying to tell them to make smaller movements, but they couldn't get the hang of it, and they got as frustrated as me. It's one of the least responsive motion-controlled games I've seen from Nintendo. What the heck happened here? But there was one mode that did end up being fun. Mirror mode. This is when one player with the controllers faces away from the TV at another player who doesn't have the controllers. The controllerless player has to pretend to play the micro games, while the controller player has to mirror his movements correctly in order to perform correctly. And it was that classic WarioWare stupidity that cut through the weird sensitivity problems. I enjoyed that a lot, but no, I wouldn't recommend WarioWare Move It. And next begins the Mario RPG Renaissance. Super Mario RPG back from the dead with a full-on remake we never thought would happen. I had played the SNES version on Wii U, so it was fresh enough in my mind that I didn't need to pick this up, but I was really happy with how it all looked. I love how they kept the squishy proportions of everyone most of all, but I don't have much to say. This is a great game. If you never played Super Mario RPG, you definitely should. HD remaster of a Game Boy Advance game. Sure, why not? I was in the mood for a quick puzzle game, so I did pick this up for around $40, even though I already beat it back when it was included in the 3DS Ambassador collection. Mario vs. Donkey Kong is a little weird to play if you're expecting Mario to control as he normally controls. But when you get used to those slower yet snappier controls, it's very fun to play and beat those time attack stages. They added an additional world with extra hard levels, so that's nice, but I'm not gonna say this is a game anyone needs to play. It is just that same Game Boy Advance game, but in HD. It's got co-op now though. I played through most of the game in one sitting with my cousin and we were up till like 3 a.m. doing it. I don't know why we did, but it was fun. I loved the idea of this game when it was first revealed. Peach had her Spotlight game once before on DS, but Princess Peach Showtime had potential to be her big grand adventure. Then the more we saw, the more it didn't seem to be that. This was another game that seemed like it was geared exclusively towards children. The dress-up gimmick, changing the overall gameplay style from level to level, was cool, but all the reviews said every one of those styles had about as much depth as a Mario Party minigame. It didn't seem super fun. It's a shame because I think Peach could handle her own full game, and I respect that they didn't want to make this a platformer to distinguish it from Mario, but there was nothing to this. A 7-hour game that's just generally unmemorable. Unlike Detective Pikachu though, I do think kids would actually enjoy it, so that's something. I remember when this was the final big announcement of a Nintendo Direct. I'm not tapped into every single obscure Nintendo series, so I felt out of the loop. But usually an announcement like this has someone somewhere freaking out. I saw no freakouts for Endless Ocean Luminous. Apparently it's the third game in a series that hasn't been around since the Wii. Switch is all about those comeback games. But yeah, no one cared about it, no one bought it, and reviews said it wasn't that good. It was one of the worst selling games on the console. I mean, just look at it. It looks like you swim around in the ocean. What else do you do? Something tells me Nintendo misjudged the amount of nostalgia the Endless Ocean franchise had going for it. Speaking of nostalgia, this was a big comeback, and another part of the Mario RPG Renaissance. I've discussed what's been going on with Paper Mario in the past few generations, so Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door getting remade with all its traditional RPG elements intact that we thought Nintendo was so afraid of is a huge deal. It's almost like it sent a message to fans telling them, we know you like this one more than the new ones, because they could have remade the original, but no, we got the best one. I grew up with this one, but I never actually finished it. No reason in particular, I loved it. I just never did it, even though I got up to one of the last chapters. So I was more than happy to jump back in and go all the way through. I always try to be aware of nostalgia blindness. It's something every lifelong gamer has in them. We all have that bias. So I've been giving the new Paper Marios the benefit of the doubt. Origami King was a fun game. Was Thousand Year Door really that much better, or do I just think that because I was a kid when I played it? Well, now that I've gone through it again, yeah, it's better. It's just a better game. The fact that there's actual character building and other RPG mechanics alone fixes the biggest problem with modern Paper Mario, but it's not just that. The personality in these characters, specifically the partners, the levels have more heart to them, the story feels like an actual story. These are the things modern Paper Mario is missing, and it's totally reasonable why fans are upset that all that stuff seemed to be arbitrarily removed. I call it a renaissance, but we have no idea what this could actually mean for the future. Maybe Nintendo is deaf to the fan outrage and they only thought to remake this one because they felt like it, just as they felt like remaking Mario vs. Donkey Kong. We have to wait until the next new Paper Mario before we see any evidence of them changing their ways. I sure hope we can get another truly great Paper Mario RPG on the Switch too, and not another just good adventure game with those same annoying flaws. Most people had the same thought when Nintendo World Championships NES Edition was revealed. It looks like a less fun NES remix, and they were right. I loved NES Remix 1 and 2. I thought it was a great idea that they could have gone way farther with. We never even got SNES Remix. The levels were cool because they presented unique challenges you couldn't actually find in the original games, like enemies from Zelda infecting Super Mario Bros. In Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, you're just given the bite-sized segments from the games themselves and are tasked with finishing them as fast as you possibly can. I had fun with it, some of the challenges were pretty tough, but I beat them all, and the whole time I was thinking, I wish we just got more NES Remix. But I will say, I had an extremely fun time with the local multiplayer that made the whole thing worth it. I tried it out with my younger cousins who barely ever play video games, and it ended up being unironically one of my best gaming experiences of the year. One of the levels is a speed run of Super Mario Bros. Just straight up beat the whole game as fast as you can. That's very difficult for someone who hasn't played Mario like ever. We started it as a joke, but then they became so determined to finish the race, we all sat there for over an hour just watching the two who would not give up die to every obstacle and race each other. Thank God the game rewinds time by like 5 seconds whenever that happens. It was so intense, it was like we were really watching the World Championships. That and the speedrun challenge to get to the top of the Ice Climber mountain. If you ever played Ice Climber, you know how much of a pain in the ass that can be. When they finally beat it, we were screaming like they won the Super Bowl. Those moments were worth way more than the $30 I spent on this game, so Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, you're alright with me. So after the roaring success of the Famicom Detective Club remakes, we got a brand new installment 30 years after the last one. And it's one of the very few M-rated Nintendo titles. I'm sure some fans over in Japan were into this, but Famicom Detective Club wasn't even a thing in the West until those overpriced remakes. Emio the Smiling Man, as a brand new game, was just as appealing as those remakes to the US, which is to say, not at all appealing. I don't want to pay $50 for a visual novel. It's just not my thing. I assume it's not most people's thing. But it made me happy to think, if even Famicom Detective Club can make a comeback on Switch, anything can. Oh man, it feels like we've discussed Zelda ad nauseum by now. But The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom unfortunately added even more fuel to the controversial fire. This wasn't just a 2D Zelda comeback that could stand separate from discussions around Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It becomes apparent quite early on while playing that the game design philosophy of Echoes of Wisdom is heavily inspired by those two games. And so I went through all the Breath of the Wild emotions over again. At first, wowed by the level of freedom not yet seen in 2D Zelda. Look at all this crazy stuff I can do. I can put a bed here. I can put a bed here. Even here. Then realizing that the story has very little going for it, although this is 2D Zelda, so that wasn't really a big deal. And then hitting that threshold of freedom where you figured out the gameplay loop and some of the problems start to show. Like, sure, I can approach these problems any which way, but I'm probably gonna use a bed to solve it. And at the end of the experience, you think, yeah, that was a fun game. But it wasn't the 2D Zelda I remember. I thought that maybe if we were never going to get an old-style 3D Zelda, the 2D ones would at least stay traditional so we can kinda sorta have it both ways. And as enjoyable as Echoes of Wisdom was, I did not need it to be another Breath of the Wild like. I also didn't need it to have the same graphical style as Link's Awakening. You had the dreamy atmosphere excuse for that, but not for this. I'm trying to decipher the message Nintendo is sending with this franchise. Is this all Zelda can be now, regardless of having 2 or 3 dimensions? Just forever, this series, any game, is going to be a big sandbox that lets you do whatever you want, quote unquote. Back when the first 3D Zelda came out, Ocarina of Time, it was seen as a big advancement, right? We still got 2D games. I suppose they were just relegated to portable systems now. That was fine, we still got them and they were great. But imagine if once Zelda went 3D, we never got a 2D Zelda ever again. That's kind of what feels like is happening now. Perhaps I'm thinking too hard about it. I've been thinking about it for these last 8 years. Maybe they just wanted to make a game where you play as Zelda and wanted it to feel different than when you play as Link. In which case, she did a much better job than Princess Peach. But now mainline Zelda is split into 4 categories. The A Link to the Pasts, aka traditional 2D, the Ocarina of Times, traditional 3D, the Breath of the Wilds, modern 3D, and the Echoes of Wisdom's modern 2D, of which this is the only game that belongs to that category. If those first 2 categories are being erased, I'm gonna be really sad, because there's no way there can be room for all 4. Another Mario Party comes by, tempts me to play, looks really fun, yet I can't justify buying it. Super Mario Party Jamboree is the second in this now established alternate style of Mario Party game. I enjoyed the first Super Mario Party, and this looked like it was even better. This one had more boards than Superstars, 2 of which were from classic N64 titles, and it had more minigames. It was marketed as the biggest Mario Party game ever, which it did seem to be. Certainly so now that it has its own Switch 2 expansion, Jamboree TV, which incorporates the silly camera attachment. I played some of it at the Switch 2 Experience event and was surprised at how accurate it was, but it is literally just Kinect minigames. I felt no different than I did playing those Kinect party games back on the Xbox 360. Anyway, looks like if you're gonna get one Mario Party game, this is probably the one, but it's not like they won't release another in the next few years, so maybe wait for that. The third in the trilogy of the Mario RPG Renaissance. Maybe the most important one. We were all under the impression that the series was dead since Alpha Dream shut down in 2019, but Nintendo can just give the IP to anyone they want. The developer named Acquire is now on the case, whose fans boasted about their involvement in the Octopath Traveler series. I've played and enjoyed all the Mario and Luigi games, but I can acknowledge the series was dipping in quality towards the end. Now that it's back, I can say that Mario and Luigi Brothership is about on the same level of quality as those last 3DS titles. There are some parts that are better, a few sparks of good character development, gameplay is still mostly fun, music is just okay. There's some interesting twists, but a lot of meandering, dull points. The animation is awesome, but yeah, overall I wouldn't recommend it to most. It's not a bad game, it just has something missing. Kinda like modern Paper Mario. I liked the Brothership itself, it was fun sailing around to discover and explore islands, and it doubles as a hub area to house the side characters you pick up along the way. Gameplay outside of a few challenge levels is mostly just going through the motions. Don't have to think much about how to approach any enemy, but that was probably an issue nearly all these games had. I'm happy to see it back, but it feels like the exact same game we would have got if Alpha Dream didn't die and just made the next one on 3DS a few years after Paper Jam. I'm hoping for more of an evolution next time. And finally, Fitness Boxing 3, your personal trainer. They did not make 3 of these. Let's go to the next year. 2025 marks the end of the Switch 1's life. Technically. Switch 2 is already a massive success, so I don't personally think they're gonna support the system for too long. The year started off with Donkey Kong Country Returns HD and Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, neither of which I played. Mario and Luigi Brothership will be the last game I buy for the system. But as promised 8 years ago, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond will release for both Switch 1 and 2. as will Pokemon Legends Z to A. And we have confirmation that Switch 1 will be supported through 2026 with the release of Rhythm Heaven Groove and Tomodachi Life Living the Dream. I wonder if those will get Switch 2 editions, or if there will even be 2 different versions to buy at all. I love that those might be the final 2. It's been a theme throughout this video, but if there's one takeaway I have from Nintendo Switch, it's that it was a system of comebacks and new beginnings. Zelda got a new identity in both dimensions, Smash Bros. Did the impossible, Kirby finally went 3D, Animal Crossing went to new horizons, Pokemon finally did new things with the main lines and started the Legends line, 3D Mario came back, 2D Mario came back, Mario Party How We Like It came back, Xenoblade made a huge comeback, Metroid Prime 4 and Dread came back, all 3 Mario RPG series came back, Pikmin came back, Rhythm Heaven's coming back, Tomodachi Life is coming back, Endless Ocean and Famicom Detective Club for the 5 people who care, they're back, baby! And there are some cases where I wish the new games we got took a bigger leap forward, but it just makes me excited for what's next on Switch 2. It's not just the games that had new beginnings. Nintendo re-established, rebranded themselves as the king of the industry. Everyone knows what a Switch is. Everyone wants a Switch 2. And even though part of me wants to see Nintendo do something crazy when they announce a new console, I'm already loving my Switch 2. I'd much rather have this than trying to force some different gimmick that's too crazy and ruins all this momentum. Because at the end of the day, it's about the games. Switch 2 is already keeping the comebacks coming. A brand new Mario Kart for the first time in over a decade. A new 3D Donkey Kong for the first time in 26 years. A new Sakurai-directed Kirby game. Wheelchair basketball? Like, I'm struggling to even think of what still needs to come back. Star Fox, for sure, like a big new Star Fox, free from stupid gimmicks, or being another Star Fox 64 remake. F-Zero? Just literally anything for F-Zero? Star Tropics? I'd be into that. And the mother of all comebacks, Mother 3. Or perhaps a new game. That would be the ultimate cap to this era of Nintendo. We can go right into the Dark Ages after that if that happens. It wouldn't even matter. And I know I went over plenty of problems and controversies that spawned out of this era. Didn't even talk about all the ones surrounding Switch 2 already, like $80 games and game key cards. I don't want to come across as a total Nintendo shill, but it's probably a bit too late for that. I don't think anything can stop me from being a Nintendo fan. They've done some bad, annoying, malicious, or sometimes straight stupid things, but the Nintendo Switch proved that nobody even comes close to delivering the goods like they do. So I made this video celebrating what I think is a legendary generation of gaming. Here's hoping the Switch 2 can live up to it in the long term. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Stay tuned, the next video will be a single game review if everything works out nicely. Hope you enjoyed, and have a good day.